Part 40. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 400. President Samur finally breathed a sigh of relief after hearing what Commander Doug said. The two viruses that were fused have antidotes and vaccines. Then maybe the antidote and vaccine for the Furious virus can be developed soon. For Simmons, although the antidote and vaccine may have been developed in the other party's research institute, he still has to make backup plans and preparations. After this meeting, he will let Caro lead his team to study the Furious virus and analysis to create antidotes or vaccines. As an antibiochemical consultant, Leon still wanted to remind everyone that the matter has not been resolved at this time, and asked, "Commander, what about the current military blockade? Are gas masks, oxygen tanks and other equipment complete? The blockade is the bottom line, and there must be no room for error, so he wants to understand the situation and see if there is anything that needs to be added." Commander Doug replied, "It has basically been encircled. We first used the ESCO blast-proof wall for basic blockade, and set up sentry posts every 2 kilometers. At the same time, we also divided isolation areas to fully disinfect the survivors who escaped." And isolation? Wait. In the case of airborne transmission, are there still survivors? Leon looked surprised and asked quickly, "Are those people immune?" To be precise, those people are asymptomatic infections. Because they were infected with the Fury virus, their physical fitness has also been strengthened. This shows that our military's thinking is correct. Commander Doug is still talking about the prospects of this military project. Okay, let's get back to the topic. After President Samur finished speaking, he continued, "Simmons, you can coordinate the gas masks and other supplies. We must ensure the stability of the blockade and prevent the scale of the biological crisis from expanding. Go down." Received. In fact, after the Raccoon City incident, we made preparations for airborne viruses and produced a batch of atomizing disinfection devices that can effectively eliminate viruses in the air. Simmons glanced at Commander Doug and said, "The truck has already set off. We need the military to cooperate in receiving and providing power support." Commander Doug immediately expressed his position. "I immediately asked people to respond and prepare the power lines." There was no time for everyone to breathe a sigh of relief. Leon asked about the next problem. The research institute may have research information on vaccines and antidotes. We need to send people there to carry out the task. Does the military have any ideas? Our side sent Delta to perform this task after the blockade was completed. Commander Doug sent special forces to carry out the mission so quickly. In fact, the traditional forces of the military planned to destroy the corpses and wipe out the existence of the institute. But now that someone has the evidence of their institute, they still have to erase it. What is the evidence? The most important thing is to make amends as soon as possible. Simmons could see Commander Doug's thoughts from his face. After a little thought, he realized that the reason why the other party dispatched special forces so quickly was just like what he had done in Raccoon City. And he himself has his own plans, and Organization X should also send its own people to Savannah City. Thinking of this, the first candidate in his mind was actually not a veteran agent trained by the organization since childhood, but a person who joined the organization halfway. Luo Guang. Leon's phone vibrated and he took a look. It was a message from someone in his team. Now there are only 3.5 members of his team, including him. The others are Bruce McGivern, whom Luo Guang introduced before, and Ake Thompson, his and Bruce's mutual friend. The remaining half of the team is not clear. Join small group liaison Hannigan. Ake Thompson, a private detective, was rescued by the GIMZ troops on Sina Island and cooperated with the Gallic military in the investigation. Finally, he and the Lot brothers and sisters left the military camp safely and could finally return to normal daily life. Because the parents of the Lot brothers and sisters were dead and they had no relatives to rely on, Acker took on the important responsibility of taking care of them, and the two children also became the assistants of Acker, a private detective. Leon and Bruce did not force Acker to abandon the two children and run around with them and go deep into dangerous areas. Instead, they asked the other party to collect information on biohazards occurring around the world while ensuring safety, and then use his detective skills. Talent analysis clues. Of course, when necessary, Acker said that he would not mind doing his job, tracking certain people and collecting illegal evidence of bad people. After learning that there was a biological crisis in Savannah City, Leon immediately asked Ake to help collect intelligence from the internet and the news to see if he could analyze anything. It is difficult to tell whether the information on the internet is true or false, but Acker still collected a lot of information about the local situation in Savannah City and some information about special zombies for Leon, which will facilitate Lion's subsequent mission in Savannah City. That's right, after Leon learned about the biohazard incident in Savannah City, he planned to volunteer himself to solve the biohazard incident himself and investigate the truth behind it. It's just that Simmons directly pointed out the mastermind not long after the meeting started, so he didn't bring up the matter of entering Savannah City to investigate for the time being. Others also saw Leon's actions and were waiting for Leon to explain the situation when they heard someone knocking on the door. The person who got the order to come in was Morgan from the FBC, with a look of fatigue on his face, because he rushed to Washington without stopping after receiving the message. Morgan walked in and said hello to everyone. President Samur got right to the point and asked, "When will your FBC be in place?" "Sorry, the biological crisis in India is a bit out of control. Their military has not completely sealed off the entire infected area so far, so at the strong request of the Z government, our FBC sent most of the additional combatants there. BN helped." If Morgan didn't think it was profitable, he wouldn't have given the other party a good look, and would have left the other party alone just like BSAA. At that time, the FBC wanted to intervene in the biohazard incident in India. The Indian government was still making things difficult and bargaining with them over the issue of command rights. Now, in order to stabilize the situation, all the benefits gained from the previous bargaining have to be given out. But for Morgan, after he learned that a large-scale biohazard incident had also occurred in the lighthouse country, he felt regretful. Before President Summer could speak, Commander Doug winked at Morgan and said, "So, when will your FBC be in place?" Morgan's face changed and he said gloomily, "Of course I know that domestic matters are the most important." After receiving the news, I immediately contacted the person in charge of the FBC in India and asked him to bring the team back. Leon asked, "What happened?" "The people in India intercepted our people and said they would not let them leave unless their biohazard incident was over." When Morgan heard the news, he cleared the desktop for the third time in his office. Ever since he became the commander of the FBC, he had been under increasing pressure. Until he cleared his desk for the first time, he found that this method was quite relaxing. He continued, "So, Your Excellency, President, in addition to discussing how to solve the problem of biological crisis, I also want to ask the country to give us support and put pressure on the other side internationally to let our FBC soldiers come back. I will solve the problem over there," President Samur continued, "but your FBC doesn't have anyone in the country. They are all auxiliary personnel and recruits with average combat capabilities. I don't think they are qualified for such an important task." In order to divert the president's anger, Morgan continued, "BSAA didn't send anyone there either. If everything has to be done by BSAA, why are we sponsoring you so much?" President Samur was very angry and cursed angrily. Upon seeing this, Leon responded to Morgan's words and said, "We have contacted the other party. The other party said that they would contact our country's military to get authorization as soon as they learned about the biological crisis, but so far they have not received a reply. Apparently it was because this incident involved the lighthouse country's military that the military had been stuck with permission. That's why the president is particularly angry. This disaster was caused by the military, and the FBC can't hold it back. It actually transferred all the people in the country because of foreign affairs. Commander Doug said with cold sweat on his forehead, "I will ask my subordinates to answer the other party now. Doug, you and Morgan should go deal with the problem first and bring me the FBC people. Don't use domestic soldiers indiscriminately in the future." Yes, Commander Doug and Morgan left immediately after receiving the order. They also had something to talk about. Leon had been thinking while Doug and the two were talking, and after they both left, he said, "Your Excellency, do you need me to bring a force over to supervise their mission? Just in case, if the Delta mission fails, I can get on top right away." He felt that the FBC and the military were not reliable and that there were too many problems. "No, you stay here and analyze the situation and provide me with suggestions at any time," President Samur continued. "You are now an anti-biochemical consultant, not a big-time soldier." Leon felt that the other party just wanted to find someone familiar with biohazard to protect him, but he still answered seriously, "Yes." Simmons left the White House, returned to his car, and made a phone call. "Boss. Got a mission," Luo Guang answered the phone. After he led the wolves from the village of Aben Hadu and returned to G.I.M.Z's South African training ground, he arranged tasks for everyone, especially the death team, and then set off for Europe. In addition to giving Sanley and company some good things to eat, he also had to prepare for the location selection of the GIMZ branch. When Simmons received the call, he was searching on the computer in the hotel, looking for a suitable place to set up a branch. The reason why the Red Emperor was not allowed to search was because when she was asked to search before, the ones the Red Emperor found were not suitable. They were either too remote or they were deceived by GG. Simmons called Luo Guang, naturally because of the biohazard incident that occurred in the Lighthouse country. He had proposed nuclear pacification of Savannah City for the first time before, and he made the suggestion on the side of the Lighthouse country. But now that the vaccine and antidote have not reached the point of immediate nuclear settlement, he will naturally take advantage of this gap to seek benefits for Organization X. The spy sent most of the information to Organization X using the computer network just to avoid exposing the spy's identity, so the virus report Simmons produced was very simple. As for the specific cause of this disaster, the spy did not know, so the investigation report only mentioned that it was related to the Military Research Institute. Simmons didn't need Luo Guang to get any research materials from the Military Research Institute. The spy of Organization X had already got it, so he sent someone to pick it up. The reason why he needed to send someone to pick it up in person was to get the original sample of the Fury virus that caused this biochemical crisis. Biochemical viruses are not electronic viruses and cannot be transmitted electronically, so he needed to send someone to pick it up directly. As for why the spy was not allowed to leave on his own, in addition to the spy's combat power of only 5, another reason was to avoid the military search. Because of their superficial identities, the spy can be unafraid of searches, but the virus samples cannot be taken out, so the spy's own departure can only be a backup plan. Simmons did not tell Luo Guang the content of the mission immediately, but asked, "Where are you?" He did not confirm the other party's location and made a phone call directly. "I'm in Europe." Luo Guang didn't wait for Simmons to ask, and directly reported what he was doing to the other party, saying, "Half a month ago, I found traces of Aida in Africa." Simmons didn't interrupt, but from the other party's tone, he knew that the other party hadn't caught Aida, otherwise the other party would have brought Aida to him long ago. X organization was dissatisfied with his obsession with a woman and prohibited him from continuing to use the resources of X organization to capture Aida, so he couldn't help but feel a little relieved and happy when he knew that Luo Guang consciously found Aida for himself. Luo Guang continued to exaggerate the matter. "When I found her, she was attacked by a group of mercenaries. It happened that the people of the GIMZ team were on the scene to deal with the biochemical crisis, so they rescued Aida. Simmons also knew about the relationship between Luo Guang and the GIMZ team. The GIMZ team was just a mercenary group focused on anti-biochemical crises, and would not threaten the hegemony of the lighthouse country, and sometimes it was even beneficial to the lighthouse country. Moreover, as for the X organization, they do not consider themselves to be an evil organization, so they did not interfere with the cooperation between Luo Guang and GIMZ. Simmons became interested in what Luo Guang said and asked, "Who are those mercenaries?" "I have investigated, they are sent by Tri-Union. According to the information I have collected, Ada seems to have gone to the headquarters of Tri-Union's West African branch to steal some data and then attracted the company's killers." Luo Guang would not miss the opportunity to make an eye drop for Tri-Union, and continued, "After GIMZ solved the killers, Tri-Union sent new mercenaries, but they were all solved." "I understand. How is Aiden now?" "She took advantage of the fight between GIMZ and the killers to escape. I was involved in the fight between the two sides, and finally failed to catch up with her. I only know that she ran to Europe." Luo Guang found a scapegoat for letting Ada run away. "I understand. That's it? It's all right. Isn't there a mission? Since you just completed the mission, I'll let others do it. You can continue to do your own thing." After saying that, Simmons hung up the phone. The reason why he gave up letting Luo Guang to carry out the mission in Savannah City was naturally because he sympathized with this subordinate who shared his worries. Otherwise, he would not be able to find a confidant to catch Aiden next time. And he also thought of a plan from the information reported by Luo Guang. He had a lot of intelligence about Sanli and company, which was just right for fishing, and the big fish was naturally the Ada Wong he had been thinking about. Meow, I miscalculated the length of the content, which led to the title of this chapter being a bit random. Thanks for subscribing and voting. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 401. Luo Guang put away his cell phone and contacted the Red Emperor on his computer. "Boss, is there any latest news recently?" The two communicated using a chat software developed by Red Emperor. When using this software, Luo Guang needs to wear a watch and connect it to the computer with a data cable. Xiaohong, according to rumors on the internet, a biochemical crisis seems to have occurred in Savannah, Georgia, the lighthouse country, but there is no official report on the matter. The Red Emperor was deceived by fake GGS on the internet before, which made her be more careful with information on the internet, so when she searched for news about a suspected biohazard, she did not immediately report it to Luo Guang. Xiaohong, I am currently sorting out information on the internet. The possibility of a biochemical crisis really happening is 98.36%. Boss, that's basically the same thing. Send me the information you collected. Not long after Luo Guang finished speaking, the computer received the data packet, and he used a special decoder to check it. After a while, he was typing on the keyboard. Boss, just by looking at the IP addresses of those messages, you can tell whether this biohazard incident is true or false. There are a large number of reports of biohazard sightings in the same area, and these people are of different ages, jobs, etc. How can they still make this big joke together? If someone is really making a big joke, there is no reason why there is no local refutation, and the lack of official reaction or refutation of the rumor is also a big problem. The Red Emperor was deceived by the false report and went to the other extreme, trusting the official report too much. Luo Guang taught the Red Emperor a lesson, and then let the Red Emperor figure it out on his own while he continued to check and analyze the situation. Although Simmons didn't say it out loud, he felt that this was the reason why the other party came to him. Or because he saved data, Simmons finally decided not to send himself to do this task, but he confirmed from the picture given to him by the Red Emperor that this was a new virus that he had never seen before, so he didn't how about going. However, Simmons had good intentions and naturally he couldn't disobey him, so he planned to change his identity and sneak into Savannah City this time. I used the identity of Amuro Ray in Harlan City before, so this time I will use the identity of Charaznable. After confirming what identity to use, the next step is to confirm the official strategy for that infected area. Because Simmons asked him to perform the task, it was definitely not just to clean up the biochemical monsters. In all likelihood, this biochemical crisis incident was related to Organization X, so he had to guard against Simmons doing what he did in Raccoon City. Although the other party did not allow him to participate in the mission, he still had channels from the Donald family. As long as he could notify himself and delay a little, he could quickly escape from the area to be annihilated. On the other side, Simmons was not in a hurry to start his fishing plan after hanging up the phone. Things in Savannah City were still very important, so he contacted the leader of the combat group of Organization X, the retiring leader Sheffield Greenwell. This combat group is still the department that Luo Guang joined back then. He is nominally an intelligence agent belonging to this combat group. However, since he left the Red Claws, he has had little contact with this direct department. Let's not talk about the relationship between Commander Sheffield and his daughter-in-law's benefactor. Although Luo Guang doesn't have much contact with the departments directly under him, he still collects various intelligence for Organization Just Turn a Blind Eye. After all, this X-Organization fighting group basically has no chance to take action. Later, because Luo Guang was instrumental in capturing Ada, he was promoted to a senior intelligence agent by Simmons and transferred to a department. I understand, designated soldiers will be sent to perform the mission after confirming the needs and mission objectives. Commander Sheffield hung up the phone and called Emma Greenwell and Jack Jones. Because Simmons received Captain Sheffield's retirement report and recommendation list, he specifically asked Emma to participate in this mission, and also did the test by the way. Simmons felt that there was no problem with Sheffield recommending his own daughter. He appointed people on their merits. As long as his daughter had excellent abilities, there was nothing wrong with letting her daughter serve as the leader of the combat group. Captain, just as Sheffield was deep in thought, Emma and Jones knocked on the door and came in. Emma, there is a task above, and you are specifically assigned to complete it. Jones, you are responsible for assisting her. After hearing Sheffield's words, Jones looked at Emma and wondered if it had something to do with taking over. Don't blame Jones. Throughout the combat group, word has spread about Skyfall's imminent retirement, but the successor has not yet been decided, so many people are speculating on who will take over this position. Emma is one of the candidates, but except for Jones, no one knows that she is the daughter of Captain Sheffield. Is it a test from above? Emma was a little nervous. Although she called Sci-Fi the leader of the group in a very polite way and kept a clear distinction between public and private affairs, she was still very happy that her father could recommend her. Sheffield replied, I don't know, but it said that this task is very important, so I asked Jones to be responsible for cooperating with you to complete the task. After that, he told Emma and Jones the basic content of the mission. A virus that can spread in the air. Jones was very surprised. In this kind of mission, any mistake would be fatal. Sheffield replied, you are all members of the Super Soldier program. Your bodies have been strengthened and your resistance in all aspects is far beyond that of ordinary humans. That's why the higher UPS pointed us out to carry out the mission. Under normal circumstances, this kind of mission does not require the dispatch of a combat group. Only a few intelligence officers can complete the mission, so Simmons initially planned to send only Luo Guang. Jones was unsure and said, but it has not been tested. Whether we can be immune to the virus is also an unknown. So you can't take this mission lightly just because you have a strong ability to resist infection. Captain Sheffield continued, according to intelligence, this rage virus is a combination of the blood plague virus and the Harlan virus. You should carry the antidote for these two viruses and set off first. Jones wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Emma. I know. I remember that the organization seems to have developed a combat suit with a mask and a self-circulating air system. Can I apply for it? Emma knew that Joan was worried about her safety, but if she didn't carry out this life-threatening mission, then even if she really inherited her father's position, she wouldn't be able to stay in office for long because she couldn't convince the public. You don't have to worry about this. The Combat Regiment's Maintenance Division will provide support and equipment according to your needs. You can contact them directly later. This little thing does not require Simmons's permission, so it is easy for Sheffield to open a backdoor for his daughter. At this time, there are still humans alive in Savannah City, but they don't know that they have actually been infected with the virus. But no matter what the real situation is, they just want to survive now. In this context, 4 survivors formed a 4-person survival team by chance, determined to escape from the city that has turned into hell. The 4 people are Bill, a veteran of the Vietnam War, who once suffered from cancer because of his love of smoking. When he was suffering from cancer, he joined the Cancer Treatment Medical Testing Project of Umbrella Corporation, and successfully suppressed the spread and development of cancer cells in his body by taking a cancer treatment drug produced by the company for a long time. Unfortunately, because of the collapse of Umbrella Corporation, he ran out of medicine. Fortunately, the cancer was well controlled before, and the operation was performed before the problem of running out of medicine occurred. The operation was very successful, but just when he returned home to recuperate and prepare to enjoy his old age, the biochemical crisis broke out. The second person's name is Francis. Because he looks fierce, others call him a biker gang or a gangster, but in fact he is a reliable partner with a mean face and a kind heart. He is loyal to his friends and is a real Harley rider. When the biochemical crisis broke out, he was having a party in a bar with his younger brother and girlfriend, but his girlfriend suddenly mutated and his younger brother was bitten. In the end, he could only fight his way out with the bar owner's shotgun, and then met the 3rd member of the team in the back alley of the bar. The 3rd member is named Louis, a black bald man, a computer programmer. When the biochemical crisis broke out, he was still unaware of it and was debugging a new computer for his leader in the office of the unit. He did not realize that the outside of the office had become a mess. It was not until the leader could not stand the noise outside and went out to check, and then was bitten and hid back, that Louis realized that a biochemical crisis had occurred. He met Francis while running away, and the 2 of them embarked on the road of survival together and saved the 4th member of the team. This person is called Zoe, a self-reliant female college student. When the infection broke out, she was arguing with her parents about academic issues. Then her mother was infected. Her father killed her mother to protect Zoe, but he was also infected. After sending her father away, this strong and weak girl packed her luggage and embarked on the road of escape. As a result, she met a special infected person. The guy was wearing sling work clothes, with a huge body, a huge right hand, but a small left hand. He attacked her as soon as he met. In the end, she was rescued by Francis and Louis, but when the 3 of them acted together, they were chased by a group of zombies. They used the emergency escape passage of the apartment to avoid the group of zombies and came to where Bill lived. After the 4 introduced each other, they came to Bill's room to rest and prepare for the next plan. Before meeting the other 3, Bill had been listening to the radio and TV to confirm the situation and see if the military had set up an evacuation point, so he was responsible for explaining the situation to everyone. Neither the TV nor the radio mentioned the evacuation point, and only asked us survivors to go to the blockade isolation area designated by the military. Blockade isolation area? Does that mean we have to escape the city and go all the way to the blockade? Louis was confirming the situation, and he also wanted to make it easier for the stupid Francis to understand what Bill had just said. Francis noticed Louis's gaze and roared, "Hey, what do you mean? I know what Bill meant." "Okay, now is not the time for cross-talk," Zoe said to Bill helplessly. "These 2 are a pair of funny people. They kept talking all the way. Bill nodded and said, "This is probably why you were chased by the zombies. Because the skin of these zombies did not rot, there were many discrepancies with the official information about T-virus zombies, so he once tested the zombies in the apartment and found that these zombies were extremely sensitive to sound and light sources, which means that there was no problem with hearing and vision." After telling the other three people about this information, he said, "So when we are on the road later, it's better not to talk too much." In fact, it was a disguised way to shut up the two funny guys. For this reason, he also specially taught a few simpler gestures to facilitate cooperation later. Louis and Zoe had no objection to Bill, who had war experience and a calm and steady personality, being the leader of everyone, but Francis had some complaints. He had always been someone else's big brother and didn't want to be someone else's little brother. But the other two agreed to this, so he didn't stand up to challenge an old man over 60. After deciding these things, Bill opened his family's ammunition box and distributed weapons to everyone. He chose an M16A1 assault rifle, which was the weapon he was most familiar with. Francis liked shotguns, and took the Winchester M1887 lever-action shotgun in the box without a doubt. The shotgun he took from the bar before was thrown away when he just ran away. Louis picked up the short and powerful Uzi submachine gun, while Zoe picked up the Glock 19 pistol inside. Francis knew how to use a gun, and he used the shotgun in his hand to play the governor's classic one-handed reloading. Louis and Zoe didn't get much experience, so Bill could only give them an intensive training. After resting and loading various supplies, Bill confirmed that there was no problem, then pushed open the door and prepared to lead the team to escape the city overnight. Guns are the last means of self-defense. If you don't want to fight with the zombies, it's better not to shoot randomly, so they all took melee weapons and advanced downstairs of the apartment building. Bill took an engineer shovel and smashed it forward at the bridge of the zombie's nose in front of him, while Francis next to him raised a one-handed axe and chopped at another zombie. The remaining Louis and the other two took other melee weapons to scout the back, and were also responsible for watching the back to prevent zombies from outflanking. Their goal was to leave Savannah City, so they didn't have to clean up all the zombies in the apartment, so there was a possibility of being surrounded from behind. Perhaps it was because it was already night when the outbreak occurred, and the streets were generally clean. There were still zombies, but not many, and there were no large numbers of cars blocking the road. Louis whispered from behind, "Hey, do we really have to walk away?" This was too cruel for him, who often sat in the office, and he couldn't help but worry whether he could do it. Zoe whispered, "Didn't we discuss it before? Driving a car is equivalent to notifying other zombies to come for dinner. It would be fine if it went smoothly all the way, but it is definitely impossible in the current situation. So they would consider driving only when they reached the edge of the city." After walking about 2 or 3 kilometers, they did not alarm the zombies along the way, and there were fewer zombies on the street than before Francis and his team, as if the zombies here were attracted away. But things will not always go smoothly, and they were soon blocked by a wall. Meow. When watching other authors teaching live broadcasts, readers don't seem to watch the specific fighting process. I feel like I learned a lot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 402. The Delta Force, which was sent by Commander Doug to perform the mission early in the morning, was only 3 kilometers away from the largest Mercy hospital in Savannah. They were also blocked by a wall, and this wall also had a special name, called the Blood Plague Wall, but the Delta Force members were not aware of this. Received after the captain finished communicating with the superiors, he returned to the team and said, "Our order has changed from a cleanup mission to a rescue mission. We have to rescue the researchers in the institute and find research materials related to the virus vaccine and antidote. The deputy captain took the C4 explosive pack, looked at the captain, and asked, "What did the superiors say about this wall?" He did not eavesdrop, but he reminded the captain to ask before contacting his superiors. The specific situation was not explained, just let us go around it. The captain felt that the superiors knew about the wall but did not tell them. However, he would not tell others about this speculation at this time, which would only affect the morale of the army. Why don't we just explode?" The deputy captain didn't finish his words, and the captain interrupted, "Listen to the superiors, let's take a detour." Seeing that the other party seemed a little confused, the captain said, "Let's not talk about anything else. It's better for us to be quiet on this mission. Isn't the lesson just now enough?" The reason why Bill and his four-man team felt that there were not many zombies was because the Delta Force had just made a big fuss. The reason was not that these Delta people were arrogant and shot randomly in Savannah City, but that they encountered a special infected person. This special infected person was fat and bulky with pustules, and would make a grunting sound from time to time. Compared to other ordinary zombies, this special infected person seemed to have retained his intelligence before, hiding behind the door, and seemed to want to sneak attack the Delta Force. Fortunately, a burp exposed his position. Before his body was fully exposed, the Delta Force directly shot through the door and killed this special infected person according to the principle of the cleanup mission. As a result, in addition to the sound of gunfire, this special infected person exploded like a balloon, and the special bile in his body splashed around. Once this bile was exposed to the air, it would attract ordinary infected people. So in order not to be surrounded, they immediately shot to break through the siege, and finally used the building to get rid of the zombies. The deputy captain also remembered what happened just now and nodded. He was not afraid of fighting, but the bullets in his hand could not hold up. The work of the Delta Special Forces for so many years has been to deal with humans. Faced with biochemical crises and those biochemical monsters, their thinking has not changed for a while. In fact, according to their previous habits, when they get a mission, they often leave enough time for them to conduct special training. For example, if the next mission is an indoor raid, they will conduct a period of CQB special training. But this mission came very quickly, they had no time to train, and they were sent to the city just after packing their equipment. Of course, after the Raccoon City incident, they also added training on anti-biochemical crisis-related content, but with the emergence of the Red Claws, the number of Delta Force exercises in this regard has become very low, so they did not change their thinking immediately when they came to Savannah City. However, after such a lesson, they finally turned around and took the biochemical products here seriously. After leaving the blood plague wall, the captain found a baseball store on a detour, which was full of various baseball bats. However, they did not go into shop, because all the M401 assault rifles in their hands were equipped with bayonets at this time. This assault rifle is much shorter than assault rifles such as the M16, and is not suitable for bayonet combat, but it is enough to fight zombies. Compared with hitting with a baseball bat, stabbing with a knife is more labor-saving, and it can kill with one shot as long as it is stabbed into the head, while the baseball bat may need to be hit several times after hitting the head. These Delta Forces walked through 2 street corners in a row, a distance of dozens of meters, and they also solved nearly 50 zombies of all sizes. Although stabbing with a knife saves energy, in a city with a biochemical crisis, zombies can be considered endless for ordinary people. So when they found that 2 consecutive intersections were blocked by the blood plague wall, they changed their strategy and planned to use 2 nearby commercial buildings to directly cross the blood plague wall from the rooftop. Just as they entered the apartment, a man standing on the rooftop of another building not far away, wearing a hooded outfit, looked down at the deltas, and behind him there were 2 people in similar clothes following behind. The captain did not take the old elevator in the apartment, but led the team members up the stairs and soon reached the rooftop. There were several wandering zombies on the rooftop, and there were many rags on the ground. Although it was kicked a little messy by the zombies, the Deltas could still see that the rags were SOS. After dealing with the zombies, one of the Delta team members went to check the situation according to the captain's order, while the others took the time to rest on the spot. The team member confirmed the location of the blood plague wall and the situation of the apartment opposite. The apartment across the street was not far from him. If he dropped all his equipment and jumped over, he should be able to reach the rooftop across the street. However, the safest way was to hook the other side with his grappling hook and then climb over. Thinking of this, after confirming the general plan, he turned around and prepared to go back to report. Suddenly, a cough came from behind him. He was about to turn around to check if there were any survivors when he felt something wrapped around his upper body and dragged to the edge of the rooftop. Help! With his hands tied and his back against the low wall of the rooftop, the only thing he could do now was to stand firmly, use his waist and hips to hold the low wall, and shout for help. The other teammates basically discovered the situation the moment he was tied up, and ran towards the opponent's position with weapons in hand. One teammate was responsible for cutting off the intestine-like thing wrapped around him, while the other raised his gun and aimed at the end of the intestine and saw the special infected person. The infected person was surrounded by green smoke, thin, and nearly 2 meters tall. It can be vaguely seen that half of his face has a tumor. The intestine-like thing was spit out by the enemy, so Delta, who saw this situation, thought it was a tongue. Just as everyone was trying to save the man who was about to be dragged off the rooftop and fall to death, the 3 men in hooded clothes appeared from the rooftop on the other side, changing from a standing position to 4 limbs on the ground, ready to attack like a cheetah. Then the leading special infected person, accompanied by a high-pitched roar from his mouth, used his strong and powerful lower limbs to make them leap across the road between the floors and rush directly to the members of the Delta Force. Gunshots rang out after the whistle, and one of the 3 special infected people who leaped over was shot down directly, and the remaining 2, one just knocked down a person, was pushed away by his teammates next to him, and then shot and killed. The last special infected person who knocked down the Delta teammate raised his hand with sharp claws and wiped it directly to the neck of the Delta team member under him. The Delta team member raised his gun to block the enemy's attack, but the infected person cleverly changed the attack route, bypassed the gun, stabbed it into the chest, and then pulled it out with force. The gunshots came, and the special infected person who succeeded also fell down. On the other side, the special infected who could only spit out a tongue turned around and ran away without hesitation after feeling that his tongue was cut off. But how could the people of Delta let the enemy go? They shot and killed the enemy directly. After the enemy was shot dead, his body exploded, and green smoke appeared on the spot, but it was far away, so everyone didn't know what this thing did. The captain of Delta went forward to push the special infected away, trying to drag the suppressed subordinates out to treat the wounds, but after he pushed the infected away, he found that the subordinates below had died and died with their eyes open. He took off the gas mask for his subordinates expressionlessly, closed his eyes, tore off the dog tag, put it in his chest pocket, and collected the equipment that could be used on the other side, such as ammunition and oxygen cylinders. As for the suicide note, it had been written before they set out. The deputy captain quickly confirmed the situation of the other attack team members and reported to the captain. Looking at his companion who had lost his life, he said in a heavy tone, "No one else was injured, and the gas masks on their faces were not damaged." I know the captain of Delta nodded and continued, "We just opened fire. It is not advisable to stay here for a long time. Let someone find something to block the door to the rooftop, and the others will immediately prepare to use the grappling hook to cross the blood wall." After the attack of the special infected, they were not attacked when they crossed to another building, but they did not feel lucky. Indeed, climbing the rope is the most vulnerable time for the Delta members, but it is also the time when they are most vigilant. Instead, the enemy made a feint to the east and attacked in the west when they were resting. If they were just ordinary big-headed soldiers, there would be more than one casualty. The biggest problem now is that these special infected seem to be different from ordinary zombies and can use strategies, so they need to be more careful in their next actions. The floor and the wall are all bloody and fleshy, and they look very similar to that wall. Because the affairs of Danforth City were classified as top secret, the people of Delta had not learned about the blood plague virus in class. The deputy captain whispered to the captain, "There is nothing outside the wall, but there is one after entering." The captain was in a bad mood and replied directly, "Just say it directly, no need to beat around the bush." "I am worried that there will be more and more of these special zombies." The deputy captain expressed his concerns. It's hard to say. The captain thought about the situation along the way after they entered the city. They did not encounter any special infected people until they approached the wall of flesh and blood. However, with determination on his face, he said, "No matter what, we have to complete the mission, otherwise Alessio's life will be wasted." "Yeah," the deputy captain nodded. "But things are still getting worse. Those zombies seem to know where the deltas are, and they wander towards their location. This put a sudden pressure on the Delta force, but they didn't know why the enemy found their location. Under the leadership of the captain, they walked into a sealed room, where there was no flesh and blood attached to the walls or floor. The reason for choosing this room, in addition to being clean, was that someone suggested that the enemy might have found them because they stepped on the flesh and blood lichen-like stuff, so the captain followed the advice and brought people here. In addition to testing this hypothesis, there is another reason, that is, intense exercise makes their oxygen consumption faster, so they have to replace the oxygen cylinder in advance. When they complete the mission and leave, they can go directly to the rooftop of Renzi Hospital to take a helicopter, so the remaining oxygen is still sufficient, but there is a greater possibility of shortage of ammunition. Prepared, the captain and the superiors contacted regularly, and asked the superiors to send a helicopter to drop bullets and supplies at the entrance of the hospital, and then issued an order to continue the journey. When they just rested, the zombies did not come in, which showed that the hypothesis proposed by the team member was correct, so he discussed with the deputy captain and chose another way: the sewer. Not all manhole covers lead to the sewer, some are just canals, but they have a map of the city sewer, so they can clearly find the entrance. It's just that this entrance is a distance from the current location, and not long after they returned to the ground, the zombies surrounded them again. In order to save bullets, they temporarily adopted the single-point shooting method and soon arrived at the location of the target manhole cover. Bang! Suddenly, a special infected person with thick arms knocked the wall aside, roaring. It was like a mud truck with a brake failure. It did not stop and rushed straight to the center of the Delta Force. The Delta Force formation was directly dispersed. The captain switched to full automatic mode directly, and a string of bullets chased the special infected person from behind. The others also found their positions to resist enemies from all directions. The deputy captain was ready to pry open a manhole cover on the ground according to the map. The roar was the horn sound of the special infected people launching an attack. In the alley on the other side, the long-tongued ghost appeared and spit out his tongue directly. Almost at the same time, a hunchbacked dwarf appeared, with a strange laugh in his mouth and flexible movements. With the cover of the long-tongued ghost, he ran towards the direction of the Delta Force. The Delta team member who was targeted by the long-tongued ghost directly used the bayonet on the assault rifle to cut off his tongue and hid to one side at the same time. His teammates immediately aimed at the dwarf running over and shot him, but the dwarf moved very nimbly and hid himself behind a car parked on the side of the road, avoiding the attack. Reload! The bullet just ran out, and the Delta team member who attacked the dwarf immediately reloaded. As if he understood the meaning of the voice, the dwarf jumped up, jumped over the car, and continued to attack. The dwarf laughed strangely, and jumped up again when he was about to run in front of the enemy. Its attack method was very strange. It would jump directly onto the enemy and then use its deformed arms to attack the enemy's head. But this was not a game. When the Delta team member saw the opponent jumping high, he raised his assault rifle high and stabbed the dwarf, who could not change direction, in the air, directly piercing the enemy's chin. After getting rid of the dwarf hanging on the bayonet, he replaced the new magazine. Boom, boom, boom. After the Delta captain dealt with the special infected who rushed over, he dealt with another special infected who flew down from the roof. Listening carefully, a sound covered by the gunshot was approaching, and the sound was getting louder and louder. The ground seemed to shake slightly. Go to the sewer quickly. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 403. Chapter 396. BSAA in place. Half an hour passed. At the military blockade command post, Admiral Reynaldo Miniero, the front-line commander of this mission, was sitting on the Diaotai, listening to the information reported by his subordinates. Commander, the regular contact time of the Delta Force has passed, and we can't contact them even if we take the initiative to contact them. The communicator in the command post took the initiative to find Commander Reynaldo to report the problem. Reynaldo frowned and asked for details, saying, "Is it a signal problem that can't be contacted? Or is there no one answering?" The communicator replied, "The signal can't be contacted. They reported that they would go through the sewer before. Will this cause us to be unable to contact?" After checking the construction of the sewer in Savannah City, the communicator said, "There is a high probability that our signal will be blocked." Reynaldo's brows relaxed and said, "Then wait for the next regular contact, and then try to contact the other party. If he still can't contact, he will dispatch the reserve team, and when the reserve team is dispatched, other armed forces will follow, and it will cost a lot of money." The communicator took notes and replied, "Got it?" While Reynaldo was dealing with the problem of Delta's loss of contact, several cargo helicopters of the North American branch of BSAA landed one by one on the blockade line in the Savannah area. Although the military had already stated that BSAA was only helping out in this biochemical crisis incident and assisting in the blockade and management of the quarantine area, Chris still decided to send 80% of the soldiers of the North American branch. The scope of infection of the biochemical crisis incident was large, and if you wanted to completely block the entire area, the more manpower the better. If he wasn't worried about other biochemical crises, Chris would definitely send all his men. In terms of professionalism, BSAA is much more professional than the military of the Lighthouse country, so Chris was actually not very satisfied with the military's arrangement for this incident, but he had no choice, so he planned to send B.S.A.'s intelligence officers to confirm the situation of the military blockade line. As long as the blockade line is kept, the situation will not be too bad. Chris took Steve off the helicopter and came to Reynaldo's command post, saying, "Chris Redfield, the operations captain of the North American branch of BSAA, reports to you, Commander Reynaldo." Reynaldo nodded, and was also observing Chris. He originally planned to give the other party a head start, but the other party came to report to him as soon as he came, so he temporarily put aside this idea. The other party is an excellent soldier, Reynaldo thought to himself, and said, "Next, your task is to assist us in managing the quarantine area, and at the same time send a team to train along our blockade line. If there are any problems, be sure to report in time." Chris was also observing the other party. Hearing the other party's order, he was relieved. It seems that the other party is not a reckless and arrogant person who relies on connections. Both sides have a good first impression, and it also lays a solid foundation for the next cooperation. Chris asked Reynaldo, "Commander, what is the specific situation of the virus this time? What is the cause of the crisis?" The specific cause of the outbreak is still unclear. Reynaldo obviously would not tell an international organization that it was his own army that caused the trouble, but he could still talk about the virus, saying, regarding the situation of the virus, our military researchers have obtained a series of intelligence. He continued, first of all, the virus is named Fury virus, which is a virus that can be transmitted through air and body fluids. We have also received information about this, and the gas masks and oxygen cylinders that should be prepared are ready. Chris did not interrupt out of politeness, and then said, we specifically want to know the process of the disease of this virus, and what mutant monsters have appeared. The former is about identifying infected people when working in the quarantine area, and the latter is about how they should deal with mutant monsters when they appear. Reynaldo had not received any reports from the BSAA that they had a certain understanding of the virus. He wondered where the other party's information came from, and began to explain, although this virus is a variant of rabies, its incubation period is very short, ranging from 1 hour to several hours depending on the amount of virus inhaled, and we have a method to detect the rage virus, so the BSAA doesn't have to worry about this. After a pause, he searched the table and handed a piece of paper to Chris, saying, this is the information we have collected about the mutant. Read it here and write it down. Don't take it away. Chris took the A4 paper and started reading it. The title that caught his eye was Fey Mutant Individual Introduction Table. 1 Explosive Demon, Hypertrophic Fluid Storage Type. The abdominal cavity of the infected person will mutate and expand to a terrible extent, containing a special bile, which will produce a special smell when it comes into contact with the air, which is extremely attractive to ordinary infected people. 2 Smoker, Intestinal Mutation Air Filter Feeder Type. The infected person's intestines mutate and can freely extend from the mouth to a very long distance, and a smoke bag will mutate in the throat, making a circle of green smoke around it. The presence of rage virus was detected in the smoke produced by this mutant. 3 Hunter, Limb Mutation. The limbs of infected persons with this kind of mutation become extremely powerful, the fingers and toes become sharp and have a telescopic structure similar to that of cats. It should be noted that such infected persons may have certain intelligence and will make pretending to be human behavior. For those who collide, parts of the body will be swollen and abnormally shaped. The infected person's dominant hand will become gigantic, and the other hand will completely atrophy and lose its function, and the infected person will grab the enemy with a thick arm. 5 Jockey, a type of abnormal body atrophy, which is characterized by short stature, hunchback, only 1/3 of the height of a normal human being, skin ulcers and pus cells all over the body, and a tendency to make weird laughter constantly. Chris wrote down this information and compared it with the information Leon sent him. Most of them were consistent, except for a few varieties, which were not on this list. The information Leon sent him was obtained by Acker's analysis of videos, photos, and other information on the internet. It was actually very similar, which made him want to get to know Lion's friend. Thank you, Commander, but I have a question. Have these Fey mutant individuals been captured for research? Chris asked. What do you mean? Do you think we are hiding something? Reynaldo overreacted a little, squinting and staring at Chris. Chris shook his head and explained naturally, this introduction to the special infected person is a bit too detailed and professional. It looks like a report from a research institute, and this accident was researched by our military. Is it caused by the leak? If it were information obtained recently based on actual combat, there would be no professional words like hypertrophic fluid storage type or Fey mutation. The truth of the incident was not what Leon told Chris, but what Luo Guang saw after he registered the information on the Avengers forum. Chris was doubtful at first, because he also specifically asked Jill whether Luo Guang was not in the Lighthouse country now. However, judging from the recording time of the forum, Luo Guang basically investigated the behind-the-scenes of this biochemical crisis on the second day after the outbreak. The truth. Ronaldo did not expect that the other party would tell the truth about this biological crisis in one word, and asked, "Where did you BSAA get this news?" Conspiracy theories on the internet. Naturally, Chris would not confess Luo Guang, so he pretended that he had just defrauded the other party. Ronaldo was stunned. He didn't expect that the honest-looking guy opposite him would suddenly deceive him, but he didn't make any excuses and said directly, "I need to contact my superiors." Chris didn't let him avoid it, he made a call directly. After Commander Doug received Ronaldo's report, he went to President Samur without any hesitation and reported the matter. President Samur asked him to tell him everything without reservation. Now his position is in jeopardy, so Doug dare not hide things rashly. "Leon, did you tell B.S.A.A?" After hearing the report, President Samur went straight to the point and asked Leon. "No, I only provided information about virus mutant monsters, all collected based on online information." Leon did not hide what he had done. Commander Doug replied, "You are lying. When did B.S.A.A.'s intelligence network become so powerful? You must have tipped off the information." Except for the top brass of the traditional military forces, only 4 people who were meeting in the White House office at the time knew the truth of the incident. Excluding the 3 most unlikely people, Leon was the most likely to leak it. He has already investigated the background of Leon, the White House anti-biochemical advisor. President Samur naturally also understands Lyon's affairs. Although he does not pay attention to the biological crisis, he must pay attention to and understand the people in the Secret Service before he can decide whether to retain them. In his opinion, people like Leon, who have little official aura or government, are actually safe to use. If you want others to not know, you have to do nothing yourself. A friend of mine once said this about the pharmaceutical companies that caused the biochemical crisis. Since you caused the biochemical crisis, you naturally can't hide it from others. The other party is not his boss, and Leon does not disrespect him, and he also knows that the other party's current position is not stable. President Summer raised his hand to stop Doug's next words and said, "No matter how BSAA knew it, the problem now is to solve this incident. Commander MacArthur, if you have no evidence, please stop making unwarranted accusations against the Secret Service accusation." Doug's mouth opened slightly, but the words did not come out. He really had no evidence. Although Simmons also wanted to take this opportunity to attack the traditional forces of the military, since the president said that, there was no need for him to step on it and said, "I think there should be no evidence from BSAA, otherwise they would have made a press release long ago." Yes. So it's not a big problem. We can just follow the original plan and let BSAA help us deal with the blockade. President Samur nodded and said, "Just reply to the people on the front line." Morgan didn't want BSAA to have an easy time, and said, "After this incident, I think we still need to investigate how BSAA knew these things. After all, it may be that the military has spies from the other side." When Doug heard this, he felt that it was directed at him and retorted, "Our military definitely does not have BSAA spies. You should know that BSAA is not capable of inserting spies into our army." Simmons nodded. "Their organization." So he said, "I also think it is unlikely. BSAA has only been established for a few years. Even if spies are really sent, will the spies be promoted so quickly in the military? Will the military still let such people come into contact with research? What happened? Organization X also found a different approach, starting with researchers to successfully insert spies and obtain intelligence." Simmons wasn't saying this to defend Doug or target Morgan, he was just telling the truth. Leon followed closely and said, "Speaking of spies, the FBC should also have many spies on the BSAA side, right? Can't we use your spies to confirm how BSAA was found?" In fact, what he meant by this was that no one was cleaner than anyone else. Morgan obviously heard the meaning of Leon's words. Now that the situation was not conducive to him, he could only snort and said no more. "I understand, got it." Ronaldo hung up the phone, and then said to Chris, "It says it's no problem, so it's no problem for me. Just follow the arrangement we said at the beginning." "Yes." Chris saluted, picked up the military order document given by the other party, and left the command room with Steve. Steve breathed a sigh of relief. He had kept an expressionless face just now, but his emotional state was exhausted. After leaving the military camp and waiting for them to board the helicopter and head to the quarantine area, Steve asked, "Are we just going to let this go?" Chris deliberately told the truth about the biological crisis that they knew. In addition to confirming whether the truth was as Luo Guang said, he also wanted to take the opportunity to enter Savannah City to carry out a mission. "Then what do you want? The army is no better than a company. Don't even think about sneaking into Savannah City to help my sister get any evidence." Chris saw through Steve's thoughts at a glance. Steve quickly denied it and said, "I don't dare to do this without your support, Chris. I just feel it's a pity." Chris didn't say whether he believed it or not, but said directly, "It's good that you know. Remember to give a unified confession when the time comes. My sister is not so easily persuaded." Claire naturally also learned about the biohazard in Savannah City from the forum, but Luo Guang did not provide any evidence. So she could only ask her brother and Steve to help to see if she could get evidence during the mission. During the previous press conference, Chris did not stand by his sister, so this time he agreed to the other party, but he also made it clear to Claire in advance that he would not force it. "I know. But why didn't Claire let Luo Guang help with the investigation? Since Luo Guang told the information, there must be a way to get the evidence, right?" Although Steve didn't want to admit it, Luo Guang was indeed much better than him. Chris replied, "You and I met Luo Guang at about the same time, don't you know?" Steve was stunned for a moment, then understood, and said with a wry smile, "I met Claire earlier than me, so she knew that Luo Guang would not help her." Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 404. Because Luo Guang was returning to the lighthouse country from Europe, he arrived near the blockade one day later than the BSAA side. In the meantime, Commander Reynaldo of the military tried to continue contacting the Cent Delta Force, but he still could not be contacted. Satellite surveillance pictures show that the ammunition boxes they airdropped near the entrance of the hospital as requested have not been opened. So Reynaldo immediately activated his backup plan. To put it simply, it is to use the firepower of armed helicopters to airdrop Delta Force directly to the entrance of the hospital, and then enter the institute through the secret entrance in the hospital basement. There is no need for armored vehicles and tanks. It's not that their military didn't bring them over, but even if they are all deployed, the bullets of these armored units will not be able to clear out the zombies in the entire city of Savannah. Besides, these weapons are also needed on the blockade as sea-fixing needles, because no one knows yet whether these zombies will stay in cities or small towns and villages. As a result, this backup plan failed. The armed helicopter responsible for attracting and cleaning up zombies was hit by a cement block flying from nowhere, and then crashed and burned. The helicopter carrying Delta Force escaped the first wave of cement blocks. The Delta captain at that time made a prompt decision and directly ordered the Obzile, so that they could force a breakthrough and enter the hospital. Only one helicopter survived. According to survivors' accounts, the airborne Delta Force successfully entered the first floor of the hospital after a desperate fight. However, Reynaldo is pessimistic about whether these people can succeed. Return to Luo Guang. Because of Chris' call to her, Jill also made a special call to Luo Guang to confirm her boyfriend's movements. Luo Guang did not hide anything, but he also stated his plan, which was to change his identity to investigate the Savannah incident. Jill understood what her boyfriend meant, that is, he could just carry out this mission alone. However, Seeing that Luo Guang didn't lie or conceal anything, she agreed to the other party's decision in an understanding manner, without saying that she would also go with him. After taking care of Jill's side, Luo Guang focused on this incident again. This time he did not plan to use his true identity to perform the mission, so he planned to repeat the same trick as Harlan City and enter Savannah City through the sewer area. He didn't ask Chris directly for help because the Savannah incident was related to the military scandal, so he was worried that if he went through the BSAA channel, Chris and the others would be implicated in an accident. As a result, BSAA discovered this problem on the day of arrival and reported it to the military. So when he came to the sewer entrance, it was already heavily guarded by the military and BSAA people, and he couldn't find a suitable opportunity to sneak in. Because he was worried about being exposed, he did not stay outside the blockade for too long. After confirming the situation in the quarantine area, he stayed away from the blockade. He sat in the second-hand water-restored pickup truck he bought and parked on the side of the road, thinking about the method. Why buy a second-hand pickup truck that has been soaked in water and repaired? The main thing is that it is cheap and can be discarded at any time without feeling distressed. Moreover, the car's origin was unknown, it had no title certificate, and it was not afraid of being traced, which exactly met his requirements. When he was thinking about where to enter the city of Savannah, two trucks, one large and one small, whizzed past his car. Luo Guang stared in surprise at the truck that was quickly moving away in the rearview mirror. Regardless of the heavy truck, there was a cute cartoon anthropomorphic bee on the double doors of the cargo compartment behind it. It was exactly the same as the one Jill had seen in Harlan City. It was probably a beekeeper. This bioterrorist organization is here. This road led to the blockaded isolation area outside the city of Savannah, so he did not hesitate or verify the identity of the truck. He started the car and immediately turned around and followed it at a distance. At the same time, he called Chris using his new mobile phone and SIM card. Chris didn't need to go on a mission, so he brought his mobile phone. He heard his personal phone ringing and was a little surprised to see the unknown number on it. Hello? Who are you looking for? Phone scams are not very popular these days, so he didn't just hang up. Luo Guang changed his voice and said, Chris Redfield, I am an intelligence agent for an acquaintance of yours. I have important information to tell you. Although the other party didn't explicitly say which of his acquaintances he was, Chris unconsciously pictured Luo Guang in his mind. Because only Luo Guang has many secret intelligence sources, it is impossible for Luo Guang to collect all this information by himself, so it is not surprising that he has intelligence agents under his command. So Chris responded directly, please tell me. One large and one small, two modified trucks painted with cartoon anthropomorphic bees are heading towards the quarantine area where you are. Luo Guang explained the matter clearly without waiting for the other party to ask questions. When there was an outbreak in the new urban area of Harlan City, there was a truck with the same livery was seen at the source of the outbreak. After hearing this, Chris understood the reason why the other party was looking for him. At the Christmas dinner, after the children went to bed, everyone talked about their respective biohazard experiences. He remembered that Jill mentioned this anthropomorphic cartoon image of a bee, and Luo Guang also said at the time that this might be a beekeeper symbol of a bioterrorist organization. So he didn't ask any more questions and answered directly, I understand, thank you. Luo Guang believed that Chris could make the right judgment, so he hung up the phone and concentrated on driving. Chris immediately gave an order to Steve to take B.S.A.A.'s men to stop the two trucks for inspection, and in order to make them pay attention to this matter, he directly stated that the other party might be related to the biochemical terrorists. After making the arrangements, he contacted Reynaldo and reported the matter. I don't know about the situation in Harlan City. How sure are you about this information? Reynaldo would not hastily conclude that the other party's intelligence was wrong just because he didn't know. He was just worried that the intelligence was wrong, the wrong person was arrested, and the enemy would be alerted, giving other enemies an opportunity to take advantage. Chris told the other party about his plan and continued, "We didn't catch the other party's tail in that attack. There is no other evidence except the same B image, so we will follow the normal process this time. Even if the intelligence is wrong, it will not cause us any problems. I know, I will order the military to help you stop the other party." Ronaldo did not hang up the phone. After giving the order, he asked, "If the other party is really a terrorist, what do you think is the other party's purpose this time? A biochemical crisis has broken out in Savannah City. According to the other party's route, I think the target should be the quarantine area. I know, keep in close contact." After saying that, Ronaldo hung up the internal phone, then took out his mobile phone and called Doug. If those people are really biochemical terrorists, then the military has a perfect scapegoat. The two trucks have noticed the pickup truck following them. Although they don't know Luo Guang's purpose, the drivers of the two trucks kicked the accelerator and threw Luo Guang away after they found Luo Guang following. When the other party passed by before, Luo Guang noticed that the front of the other party's car had been equipped with bumpers and other things, and he knew that the other party was most likely a modified car. But he didn't expect that in addition to the anti-collision ability, the horsepower was also greatly enhanced. However, with Luo Guang's advance notice, BSAA and the Lighthouse Country military were already prepared. Originally, in order to prevent survivors from rushing through the checkpoint, the military brought equipment with spike belts, which came in handy. Two Hummers were lying across the road, and the BSAA and military personnel had already taken their positions, aiming their guns, ready to force the other party to stop. "Here they come." Steve saw two small trucks coming at a high speed appear from the horizon. The other party should have seen him, but did not slow down. Taking out the loudspeaker, Steve had recorded the words to ask the other party to stop in advance, so he just turned up the volume. The other party naturally did not slow down, and the BSAA and military personnel also found something wrong and were ready to evade and attack at any time. It can be said that the two trucks had full defense except that they were not equipped with weapons. There were no machine guns installed on the two Hummers, and ordinary assault rifle bullets could not penetrate the glass of the two pickup trucks. The spike strips on the ground were directly ignored by the truck drivers because they were using puncture-proof tires. Steve shouted at everyone to disperse, saying that there was a second line of defense behind them, and there was no need to block the enemy here. The leading pickup truck directly knocked the two Hummers apart from the middle and drove away. The people responsible for blocking had already hidden on both sides, but the knocked-away Hummers still hit some unlucky soldiers after the gyroscope, directly injuring those people. Steve jumped onto the Hummer that did not overturn, and after trying a few times, he finally succeeded in starting the car. "You gather the wounded here and inform your superiors of the situation here. I will go after the other party." He quickly gave orders to the people present. "Steve. There are more cars coming." One of the BSAA people saw a dilapidated pickup truck coming here not far away. "Stop them and see what's going on," Steve said, and then he stepped on the accelerator to catch up with the two trucks. Luo Guang saw that the pickup truck had broken through the defense line of the BSAA and the military, and didn't say anything. He kicked the door open, and when he was about to reach the spike belt, he turned the steering wheel and turned the car sideways in front of the spike belt. Then the hardened armor had formed a short spike in front of the shoes, and the door was also removed by him, so he could directly kick the spike belt away, and then the car went under the flying spike belt. Then he straightened the front of the car and continued to move forward. The soldiers of the BSAA and the military did not shoot or shout. When the other party turned the car sideways, they thought the other party was going to stop, so they did not prepare. Then Luo Guang's operation shocked the other party again, so when the pickup truck rushed through the checkpoint, they reacted, but it was too late. The first line of defense was breached by the enemy, and the second line of defense was also breached by the enemy, but unlike before, the small truck was successfully stopped. Or it could be said that the small truck used itself to cover the heavy truck and broke through the defense line. Luo Guan could see that the back of the small truck had been opened, and there were many bodies on the ground. Steve was also here, sitting on the ground, letting the military doctor beside him treat his wounds. "Steve, are you okay?" Luo Guan slowed down the car under the suspicious eyes of everyone, and then greeted Steve directly. Steve did not know the blonde handsome man who was talking. His head was still thinking about who he knew, and his mouth had already answered instinctively, "It's okay, I was just shot when I was arresting someone." "That's good. I'll continue chasing him." After saying that, Luo Guang stepped on the accelerator and ran away. No one would be so stupid as to use their body to carry a car. That's like trying to stop a car with a mantis arm. Luo Guang used this trick just because he didn't want to fight with the soldiers at the checkpoint. Wait, Steve suddenly realized that he was not familiar with the other party. At this time, the military in the quarantine zone had deployed a defense line here, and 3 armored vehicles equipped with heavy machine guns were ready. When the soldiers in the quarantine zone saw the big truck appear, they shot and killed the truck driver without any hesitation. But the truck driver had anticipated the situation and the accelerator was completely locked. The heavy truck was still driving at high speed, but as the driver fell, the steering wheel was turned to full, and the truck overturned. After sliding, it stopped in front of the door of the quarantine zone and did not directly crash into the quarantine zone, causing chaos, which made the soldiers present relieved. Facing a behemoth rushing at full speed, the psychological pressure on everyone to stick to the defense line was not small. No one went to check the situation or open the cargo compartment at the back, but waited for the superior's order. Chris had just controlled a heavy machine gun to pour bullets on the enemy. After changing the new ammunition belt, he was thinking about whether to shoot a few rounds at the cargo compartment to eliminate the biochemical monster inside. He had received Steve's latest intelligence. There were zombies in the cargo compartment of the small truck. The enemy had a total of 3 vehicles, so there was another pickup truck coming to him. Thinking of the cargo compartment door that was still closed, Chris guessed that the guy driving the pickup truck was here to open the door. Von Etas, the head of the Lighthouse Army in the quarantine zone, came to Chris and said, "Fortunately, we received the news in advance, otherwise this car of monsters rushed into the quarantine zone, and the consequences would be disastrous." He was worried that the survivors in Savannah City, who were in chaos, would take advantage of the chaos to escape and take the rage virus out of the infected area, so he was very grateful to Chris for saving his position. "My men said that there are more enemies coming," Chris told the information he received. However, the truck that was shot several times soon began to smoke and burn, and the whole truck was engulfed in flames. Vaughn saw this and said, "I see, but the enemy hasn't appeared yet? Is it possible that they saw the mission failed, so they fled temporarily?" "It's possible, but it's also possible that the enemy's strategy is to attack from the east and west, so it's better to wait and see," Chris said. "Just a small bottle of biochemical virus is enough to infect the entire quarantine area, so we can't take it lightly." I know Vaughn felt that the other party's words made sense, so he used the radio to notify his men to hold their posts temporarily. However, until the wounded on the first and second lines of defense came back, the broken pickup truck did not appear. So Chris asked his men to drive to check the situation. The Lighthouse National Military was not to be outdone, and also sent people, and finally found an abandoned pickup truck with one door missing in a forest. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 405. No one was found, and no traces were found on the ground. Chris reported their BSAA investigation to Vaughn, the person in charge of the quarantine area. Vaughn nodded. His men's investigation also found nothing, and said, I have the same conclusion here. He then asked, I asked the injured, and they said the man driving the pickup truck knew someone from your B.S.A.A. Steve had told Chris in detail about this. So Chris answered directly, to be precise, the other party knew that person unilaterally. The team member in question was injured and bleeding a lot, and his head was confused. Suddenly someone called his name and asked a question, and he instinctively replied. Vaughn did not express doubts about Chris's remarks. According to other people's descriptions, especially the testimony of military doctors, the BSAA boy was indeed injured at the time, and he reacted quickly, but it was too late to stop it at that time. After all, people would also hear the roar of the engine. Instinctively avoid? Now that the other party gave a reasonable explanation and the people on his side also gave confessions to support the explanation, Vaughn no longer struggled with this point. He is just an ordinary middle-level officer and is not interested in the struggle between the various forces above. Vaughn brought the topic back and said, now that the enemy suddenly disappears, it is always a hidden danger. It is not an option for us to defend passively, so I want to form a patrol team on both sides to specifically look for this enemy. The incident came to an end for the time being. When Steve reported to him just now, he put forward a hypothesis the other party might be the intelligence agent who called him. So Chris called back the phone, and finally got a positive answer from the other party, and the other party asked him to help him fool him and not to mention his relationship with BSAA. It was hard to tell the other party's identity clearly, but not saying it would waste valuable manpower, so he struggled for a while before saying, that person may not be an enemy, or he may not be from the same force as those B people. What should I say? Vaughn did not object immediately, but asked the other party why he thought so. Chris sorted out his thoughts and said, that person's car is too old, but the other two trucks have obviously been modified. If the person driving the pickup truck is really responsible for opening the door to the zombies in the truck, then, you shouldn't drive such a broken car. Vaughn retorted rationally, but it's also possible that the other party was just a backup plan, deliberately pretending to be two groups of people. Without your intelligence, we wouldn't have been prepared, and the quarantine area would have been hit by the heavy truck. Chris replied, on the other hand, since we are unprepared, why do we have to make a backup plan that is full of loopholes? If the broken pickup truck can't even catch up with the truck, aren't we afraid that the backup plan won't be dispatched because the truck is slow? Usefulness. After a brief chat, Vaughn felt that what Chris said made sense, but there was no change in the status quo because he was a stable and conservative person. So he decided, but no matter what, the identity of the opponent is still unknown, so it is better for us to be careful. Anyway, after this attack, our defensive strategy must also change, and we can no longer just focus on the blockade. While Chris and Vaughn were discussing, Luo Guang, the former owner of the broken pickup truck, had already sneaked through the blockade while the BSAA and the Lighthouse Army's eyes were attracted to the large truck. The blockade was still a long way from Savannah City. According to the map, Luo Guang first went to a nearby town to buy goods. Breathing in the sweet scent of the countryside, he could already feel the raging virus entering his body without the system reminding him. Judging from the amount of virus inhaled in this breath, the content of the Fury virus in the air is very low and its activity is not high. From this perspective, although the rage virus can spread in the air, it may have a time limit or be easily affected by other factors. After entering Luo Guang's body and sensing a suitable environment for survival, the Fury virus immediately regained its vitality, but was instantly surrounded by the big brothers in Luo Guang's body and was directly swallowed by the Shinra virus. Let me see how the Furious virus performs. After finding a safe place, Luo Guang hid and began to study the Furious virus. He still hopes to fuse the original version of the Furious virus without much mutation, but this does not prevent him from analyzing and collecting information about the Furious virus first. As before, let's analyze the DNA of the Fury virus first, and then compare it with the system's database. 65.22% are consistent with the characteristics of blood plague virus, 22% are consistent with Harlan virus, and the rest are analyzed as mutation parts. The system quickly gave Luo Guang an analysis report. Blood plague virus. Luo Guang missed his blood plague brother in Danforth City a little, so he opened the window, emitted the blood plague pheromones, and tried to communicate with the zombies outside, but failed. This made him feel strange. According to analysis, 65.22% of genes contain communication capabilities, so why don't these furious virus zombies have this function? Etc. Luo Guang suddenly thought of something. The guys wandering outside are more accurately called infected than zombies, because these guys are not dead. As long as they find the antidote, it is possible for them to transform back into humans. It is not difficult for him to remove the furious virus from the infected person outside the window, but if he cannot produce the antidote on a large scale, he alone will not be able to save all the infected people in this biochemical crisis. Now the military of the Lighthouse country also knows this, so unlike the previous Resident Evil crises, they chose to let the survivors go to the isolation area of the blockade on their own, instead of sending out a large army to search and rescue survivors and eliminate zombies. People infected with the Fury virus have the possibility of turning back into a living person. Although not many people know about this, they must always prepare for a rainy day. The military has persuaded them on the grounds of necessary sacrifices due to the casualties caused by the current battle against Mercy Hospital. President Samur. Luo Guang's goal this time was not only to integrate the furious virus, but also to save more people and bring some local specialties to his GIMZ researchers. The GIMZ force does not research biological weapons, but how to use biochemical viruses to benefit mankind is also one of their research goals, so this virus that can ensure human survival may be a good experimental material. The guys at the institute should like this gift. So the goal of his trip was to go to the Military Research Institute, get the original virus sample from it, and get more research information about the Fury virus. As for the location of the Research Institute, he had obtained it through the Red Emperor's eavesdropping on military communications. The Research Institute is located underground at Mercy Hospital in Savannah City. It can only be said that the military does not have a long memory. In Danforth City, the Research Institute was built under the urban hospital, which led to the destruction of the entire Danforth City. Luo Guang's analysis of the Fury virus continues. Overall, the mutated part of the gene was a bit interesting, but he felt that the virus would not improve him much, and it should only add 1 or 2 skills, so he let the system handle the rest for him, such as record characteristics, analyze the possibility of integrating with your own existing skills, etc. It was still about 10 kilometers away from Savannah City, and Luo Guang didn't want to walk there, so he borrowed a car in the town and drove to Savannah City. Ronaldo was currently checking the records of the B attack reported by Vaughn, and at the same time, he also asked people to obtain information on the Harlan incident. As reported by BSAA, anthropomorphic cartoon images with the same pattern have also appeared in Harlan City. However, during the Harlan incident, the information collected by BSAA could not be used as effective evidence to prove the existence of such a biochemical terrorist organization, so other countries or organizations did not care. Vaughn also reported the incident about the broken pickup truck, and he adopted Chris's statement and characterized the person in the pickup truck as a third party from an unknown force. Ronaldo also agreed with Chris' explanation that his soldiers did not know each other. After all, the people on the second line of defense had just solved an attack and did not have much left to intercept the opponent. But the other party chose a relatively peaceful approach, which was very different from those B's. Commander. While Ronaldo was still checking the report, the signal soldier had something to report again. Explain. The communications soldier replied, intelligence came from the satellite. There is a blue convertible heading from the town of Annecy to the city of Savannah. The guy driving the car seems to have blonde hair. Reynaldo checked the map of the quarantine area and confirmed the location of the small town of Annecy, which was the town closest to the quarantine area, so he couldn't help but suspect that the driver was the missing third party, who happened to be mentioned in the report. People are also blonde. If this is the case, it means that the other party sneaked through the blockade from a place they did not know. This is not a small problem, so he immediately told Vaughn about the matter and asked them to check the blockade and video. Then he gave an order to the communications soldier, saying, "Ask the people over at the satellite to find out how this person appeared in the town." The communications soldier replied directly, "I only saw the man coming out of a single-family house over there, and I didn't see anyone else." "Well, please inform the other side to keep an eye on that guy." The TV and radio signals were not interrupted, and ordinary people should not go in the direction of Savannah City. What about Delta Force? Reynaldo himself was pessimistic about the success there, saying, "They will naturally be able to resume communication with us when they leave the Institute. Then they can just contact us directly." Received after the signal soldier finished speaking, he notified the person in charge of the satellite of the commander's order. Luo Guang doesn't know that his whereabouts have been locked by the military, but even if he knew, he wouldn't care too much. Because he is currently using the identity of a virtual character, it doesn't matter to him if the other party can't find out his real identity. Not far away, the outskirts of the city have been seen. Luo Guang suddenly braked and slowed down the car. At the same time, he reached out of the car and waved to the people in front of him. The 4 people in front are the 4 Bills who escaped from Savannah City. At this time, the bodies of the 4 people were covered in blood, and their eyes were still gleaming, giving people the impression that they were soldiers returning from a long battle in victory. Bill and his friends were lucky. As they moved further and further away from the Mercy Hospital, they did not encounter those special infected people. Then the big move made by the Lighthouse Nation military at the Mercy Hospital directly attracted most of the ordinary infected people in the city. Despite this, Bill and his friends had all run out of bullets in their guns. Because Bill's M16 assault rifle was equipped with a bayonet and used as a long gun, the other 3 people's guns had all been thrown away. Since the other party was able to escape from Savannah City, the rest of the journey was a piece of cake for them. "Hey, how is the situation in the city now?" Luo Guang stopped beside a few people and said hello. Driving a convertible, looking like a blonde handsome man on a picnic, Zoe felt that the other party's style was very different from hers. She and others were refugees, and the other party was like a noble on a trip. Francis looked unhappy and taunted, "Is this a noble lord going out for a trip?" Louis was not forgiving and said, "Brother, to be honest, your taste in cars is too bad. Aren't you afraid of being bitten by zombies when driving a convertible in this world? It's too insecure." When he was a social animal before, he ignored the boss's scolding, so Luo Guang didn't care about the 2 people's ridicule. "The situation in the city is not good. I don't know what the military is doing. Helicopters are dispatched and the battle is in full swing." Although Bill was surprised that the other party looked inappropriate, he was not as sharp-tongued as the 2 people and answered Luo Guang's question. "Is that so? I'll give you the car. It's still far from the quarantine area." Luo Guang jumped out of the car without turning off the engine. Zoe was a little surprised. Her 2 companions had just mocked each other, but the other party didn't care and gave them the car, so she unconsciously asked, "What about you?" Luo Guang took his backpack and said, "I'm going to the city to find someone, and I may not be able to come back." Although Bill and others didn't know who the other party was looking for, it didn't prevent them from looking at Luo Guang with respect. Zoe even imagined that the other party was going to the city to find a loved one, so he didn't care even if he faced zombies all over the ground. Luo Guang waved his hand, turned around and left, without asking the other party's name. Although Francis despised Luo Guang's style, It was his first time to sit in a convertible, so he got on the driver's seat without saying a word. Louis also wanted to try the convertible, so he said, "Hey, Francis, do you have a driver's license? Let me do it." Francis looked at him with contempt and said, "Didn't you just despise the taste of this car? Let me do it." As he said that, he habitually touched the key position, but he didn't touch the key. He and Louis, who sat in the co-pilot seat, both found that the car was not started by the regular procedure, but was started by someone using the wiring ignition method. Bill and Zoe also got in the car one after another. After hearing what Francis said, Bill just said lightly, "Do extraordinary things in extraordinary times. Didn't we just plan to steal a car and leave?" Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. I don't know why I am always sleepy recently. I want to hibernate. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 406. Time goes forward. The first Delta Force Metal team that lost contact was not completely wiped out. They successfully hid in the sewer. The infected who were chasing them did not know how to open the manhole cover. They could only wander around the place where the Delta disappeared, attacking their companions in a helpless and furious manner. However, the owners of those special infected had already known that uninvited guests had entered the sewer area, and were dispatching troops to deal with these little mice. But the sewer system here is different from that of Harlan City. Relatively speaking, there are not so many open-air sewer entrances. So under normal circumstances, if you want to enter the sewer area, you either open the manhole cover and climb down like the Delta Force, or take a long detour to the drainage outlet or sewage treatment plant on the edge of the city. The owner of this special infected obviously did not understand these things. He only knew how to push open the manhole cover, but did not know how to pull it open, so he chose to find another way. The situation in the sewer is much better than on the ground, and there is no blood and flesh covering the ground or walls. Michael, count the ammunition. The captain of the metal squad was the first to come down. After confirming that it was safe, he counted the number of people who came down. Except for the people who died before, there were no more casualties in the previous battle, so he only asked his deputy captain to count the ammunition. Now they are still some distance away from the Mercy Hospital, and they will definitely have to fight a few tough battles next. After counting the ammunition on their bodies, they reported. The deputy captain concluded, there are only 2 or 3 spare magazines left for everyone. It consumes much more than expected. When dealing with those infected, the Deltas can still respond calmly and use single-shot shooting to solve the enemy, but when facing some special infected, they often need to use half or even the whole magazine to solve the enemy. Especially the 3 special infected, the rammer, the jockey and the hunter, they act quickly and know how to cooperate, so in order to accurately and quickly solve them, the Deltas have to quickly empty the magazines. "Damn it," the captain said angrily, "that bastard Reynaldo is pitting us. The enemy's combat power is much stronger than expected, and there are many special infected people, but Admiral Reynaldo Miniero did not provide them with information about the special infected people. Because they are responsible for destroying evidence, if they know too much, the result is that the metal squad will also be killed, so their superior Reynaldo was kind and did not tell them too much. As for why he didn't mention it after changing the mission target, it was because the metal squad did not report anything about the special infected people, so Reynaldo thought they could handle it, so he didn't waste time talking about these things. The metal squad did have the upper hand against those special infected people, but Reynaldo did not consider that the metal squad's advantage was based on sufficient guns and bullets, so he misjudged the supply problem. During the mission briefing, he planned to let the metal squad rely only on airdrops to supply ammunition to complete the mission quickly, so the metal squad did not carry bulk bullets, but carried as many full magazines as possible, and then threw them away when they were used up. Although the deputy captain was also angry, he remained calm, because it was his duty to hold back the target of anger. He said, "It's useless for us to be angry now, how about we evacuate directly from the sewer? Until now, the zombies have not chased us. I think there won't be many zombies here. If we use bullets sparingly, it should be enough for us to evacuate. Normal people would not come to explore such a stinking place. No one came here, so naturally there were no infected people. You know I won't run away." What are the other options? The captain didn't want to be a deserter. Even if he had to give a heavy punch to the bastard who gave the order, it would be after he completed the mission and returned alive. The deputy captain looked up and said, "The first is to change places, stay away from the Mercy Hospital, and then contact the superiors for ammunition resupply. The second option is to go directly to the door of the Mercy Hospital for resupply, and then rush into the Institute in one fell swoop to complete the mission. The airdropped ammunition boxes are all loaded with magazines, and when resupplying, just stuff them into the ammunition bag. The hospital is the source of the outbreak. The enemy will definitely guard it tightly. Unless we can contact our superiors to provide us with helicopter support, it will not be easy for us to get supplies." The captain of the Metal Squad has now planned his team's actions based on the assumption that the zombies also have a commander. The deputy captain shook his head and said, "Edgar just tried to contact the headquarters, but failed. As a communications soldier in the team, it is Edgar's responsibility to ensure smooth communication at any time, so after entering the sewer, in addition to checking the ammunition, he also checked the communications situation. Now they are basically in a dead end, unless they can contact Ronaldo, confirm the location of the airdrop ammunition box, and then use the remaining bullets on hand to grab the ammunition box and supply it in batches. Otherwise, when the Metal Squad confirms the location of the ammunition supply box and goes to get the supply, the bullets in hand may not be enough for them to cover each other to get the ammunition. Or I can try to contact my superiors." Edgar, a communications soldier who was listening nearby, raised his hand and said, "There is a hole on the manhole cover, enough for me to extend the antenna." "Very good, but the zombies above should still be there, so be careful." The captain thought the other party's method was good. The deputy captain thought for a moment and said, "It's still a while before the next regular contact. Why don't we take a break first?" The captain of Delta glanced around his teammates and said, "We don't have enough oxygen. We can't afford to dawdle. At least we have to ask the top to airdrop some more oxygen cylinders to us." Edgar nodded, moved the communication equipment to his chest, and climbed up the ladder. A little below the manhole cover, he leaned against the wall of the shaft with his feet on the stair rails so that he could free his hands to operate the communication equipment. Pulling out the antenna, he didn't rush to stretch it out to the small hole in the manhole cover, but held his breath and listened to the movement above. He was worried that the zombies would break the antenna or tear it directly. After confirming that he was done, Edgar stretched out the antenna and was about to contact the command post when he heard the sound of a pool of liquid spitting on the manhole cover. Before he could react, accompanied by the sound of metal corrosion, a thick arm directly smashed through the manhole cover. Edgar was hit in the face by the punch and fainted instantly. His legs softened and he fell down. The others were resting and no one reacted. Edgar fell to the ground and was motionless. The members of the Metal Squad stood up instantly with their weapons in hand and saw that the signalman's facial features were sunken and some green liquid was corroding his clothes and skin. The military doctor in the team ran forward and rushed to save people. At this time, a crasher jumped down and stepped directly on Edgar's body, crushing the communication equipment that Edgar subconsciously protected in front of his chest when he was unconscious. The deputy captain quickly grabbed the military doctor and threw him back. At the same time, he held the assault rifle in his other hand and shot, killing the crasher who didn't have time to protect his head with his hands. The surviving members of the Metal Squad knew that the crasher was just an appetizer and it was no longer safe here. Because they didn't take off their equipment when they rested, they could run immediately at the captain's command. An ordinary infected person was attracted by the gunshots and did not notice the hole on the ground. He stepped on the air and fell down, making another loud noise, and was smashed to pieces. The deputy captain took the time to look back and could only say that he and his team were still a little lucky. It seemed that the enemy would not be able to catch up for a while. Let's go directly to the institute. Use the communication equipment there to contact the outside world, and then we will guard the institute and wait for others to rescue us. In an emergency, the captain thought of what they would do next. But plans cannot keep up with changes. When they were still 300 meters away from the Mercy Hospital, the dam wall appeared in the sewer and blocked them again. I will blow this thing up directly. The team's blaster made a quick decision and took out the explosive pack he had prepared before. There is biogas here. There is no time to assess your safety. The deputy captain did not dare to gamble and immediately stopped the other party's behavior. The captain looked around and found the shaft back to the ground, and said, "Let's go up first. After you install it, leave time for retreat." "Got it," the demolition man smiled grimly, and his skills finally came in handy. The manhole cover was covered with thick fleshy lichens. The captain pushed up the manhole cover with force, and then cut a circle with a knife before successfully pushing the manhole cover open. This way, the captain quickly confirmed the location and pointed to the two-story commercial house with the door open in the distance. The demolition man quickly followed, but after the countdown ended, nothing happened and there was no vibration. While the captain shot and solved the infected people who surrounded him, he said, "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake about the explosion time? I have been dealing with bombs for most of my life, it is impossible to make a mistake." The demolition man was also anxious and immediately said that he was not wrong. Since it is not the demolition man's problem, it is the problem of the wall. But no matter what the reason, the metal squad can't go back to the sewer now. The area around the manhole cover outside has been occupied by the infected, and they don't have many bullets on hand, all of which are reserved for those special infected. So they seem to have only one way left, which is to continue moving forward, get supplies at the hospital, and then enter the institute to wait for rescue. However, the current metal squad needs some luck to complete this plan. After 20 minutes, only 3 people survived in the metal squad, namely the captain, the deputy captain and the military doctor in the team. The demolition man sacrificed himself, used up all the explosives he carried, led the zombies away, and opened up a way forward for other members. In addition, 2 people died. One of them was sprayed with acid by a special infected person who could spit acid. He took advantage of the pain while his arm could still move and ended his life with a bayonet, while the other person pushed the military doctor away, and was directly knocked out of the window by the ambushed attacker and fell to the ground from the 5th floor. After sacrificing themselves along the way, the remaining 3 finally arrived at the top of an apartment building 50 meters away from the Mercy Hospital, which was not yet covered by the flesh lichens. The reason they came here was just to bet that the guys sent by the superior backup plan could attract the zombies away and find them hiding on the rooftop. Because they had used up all their bullets and were really unable to move forward, facing the special infected, it was difficult for them to protect themselves now. Although the 3 survivors left the disgusting flesh carpets, the zombies had basically moved at the sound, and it was only a matter of time before they broke through the iron door of the rooftop. It can only be said that fate is not over. The 2nd Delta Force sent by General Ronaldo, that is, the helicopter formation of the Juliet team, arrived above the Mercy Hospital and started to make a fuss, attracting all the infected people. The backup plan is here. The deputy captain carefully stuck his head out to observe the movement of the helicopter. The captain leaning against the wall did not observe the situation, but just nodded. Those helicopters were not here to rescue him and others, so it was not time to be happy yet. The military doctor looked at the captain and said, "We have to use a signal gun to let them find our location and pick us up." The captain sighed, stood up, cheered up, and said, "They also have their own tasks. Do you think they will give up their tasks for us now? I know, but those armed helicopters will not stay in the air forever. We will use them when they evacuate. As if to verify the words of the military doctor, a piece of cement flew quickly from the ground to the direction of the helicopter and directly smashed the armed helicopter down. The cement block was not a missile, so the alarm on the helicopter did not sound at all. When the driver was sitting in the cab, he had a large blind spot in his vision below, so he did not react at all. The enemy was very smart, and he ran away after throwing it. The other armed helicopters did not even see the enemy's appearance. It was a special infected person. Not only the cement block, but also the car was a piece of cake for it. Just as the other armed helicopters were cleaning up the scene and looking for the enemy, a car flew directly from the other direction. When the driver of the targeted helicopter was reminded by others, it was too late. The three members of the metal team who were watching the battle not far away looked at the falling helicopter, as if they saw their hopes falling with it and being smashed to pieces. At this moment, the door of the transport helicopter protected in the middle opened, 4 ropes were thrown down, and the members of Juliet's team began to land. They actually got on like this. The time from the start of the fight to the landing was obviously not enough to clear a safe landing site, so the deputy captain was so surprised. The captain also raised the assault rifle that had emptied all the bullets in his hand, used the 2x scope on it as a telescope, and said, "When did the people in Juliet's team become so powerful?" If he was not mistaken, all the special infected and ordinary infected who crossed the firepower net of the armed helicopter were knocked down by the people of Juliet's team with bursts of fire. The two sides often have training competitions, and the results are wins and losses, so the metal team has a say in the strength of the Juliet team. The deputy captain observed for a while and said, "I am familiar with their deputy captain. Judging from his size, it is right. And that guy doesn't like to use optical sights. His gun is the only one in the entire Juliet team that doesn't have a sight installed." The captain saw the person the deputy captain was talking about, who happened to be walking at the end of the team, and nodded. The Juliet team moved quickly, rushed into the Mercy Hospital, and disappeared from the eyes of the 3 people in the metal team. The battle of the armed helicopter ended after the Juliet team entered the Mercy Hospital, and immediately raised the altitude and began to retreat. But just as they were evacuating, the transport helicopter that had previously carried the Juliet team was smashed down by a high-rise water tower during the stretching process. The survivors of the metal team finally saw the special infected person standing on the roof and throwing out the water tower. The monster was huge, and the muscles of the whole body were strengthened, especially the muscles of the upper body became abnormally developed, especially the arms, while the overall changes in the lower body were not big, resulting in its strong hands almost touching the ground when they were naturally vertical. After shooting down the transport helicopter, the monster did not pursue the victory. It let out a low roar from its mouth and beat its chest with its arms to declare its powerful strength to the surroundings. On the metal team side, under the puzzled eyes of the military doctor, the captain of the team held the signal gun tightly and did not fire the signal flare. Because there was such a monster, the armed helicopter had no time to lower its altitude to rescue them and leave, and the other party did not know their identities and might choose to ignore their signal flares. At that time, it was a time of real despair. So the captain of the metal squad chose to keep this last glimmer of illusory hope and did not fire a flare. Meow, Delta saw zombies in his eyes and words, but to be precise, they were infected people, so the 2 names here are actually the same thing. I am not feeling well. I just finished typing now. I may have to take a day off tomorrow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 407. What happened to the Delta Force had nothing to do with Luo Guang. After saying goodbye to the 4 survivors, he carried his backpack and entered the city of Savannah. There were not many infected people outside the city, and there were still many fallen bodies on the ground, which should have been dealt with by the 4 people he just met, so Luo Guang was too lazy to deal with the remaining infected people one by one, and went straight through. Google searched Can. As he got closer to the Mercy Hospital, the infected people became more and more dense, but the saying passing through a bush of flowers without getting a single leaf on you is still the best interpretation of him. The satellite operator who received Ronaldo's order and stared at Luo Guang was surprised at this time. After staring at the screen for a while, he came back to his senses and reported what he saw to the Sine-Alman at the front line command post. Are you telling the truth? The Sine-Alman in the command post did not report this information to the commander immediately, but asked the other party a question. The satellite operator had obviously guessed that the other party would ask this question, and said, "I knew you wouldn't believe it, and I have already cut a video and sent it to you." Okay, the other party swore and sent a video. The Sine-Alman couldn't refute it and prepared to report it. Before the Sine-Alman reported to his superiors, Ronaldo, who noticed the situation over there, took the initiative to ask. Sine-Alman, what happened? Commander, the person you asked the satellite to keep an eye on was too powerful. The Sine-Alman repeated the words of the satellite operator. You said that the other party ignored the infected people, and then avoided the attacks of the infected people all the way, and ran towards the direction of the Mercy Hospital. What Ronaldo cared about most was not how amazing the other party's body movements were, but that the other party's goal was very clear. But the Sine-Alman thought he didn't believe in the other party's ability, so he said, the video was sent over there, do you want to project it on the big screen? Play it. Tell them to keep an eye on the other party and make sure to confirm whether the other party's target is the Mercy Hospital. Yes. Luo Guang ran on the street and didn't care about being discovered by others. Because he didn't use a mask or fake skin to disguise himself, but actually changed his facial features and part of his DNA, so even if he took the initiative to draw blood for testing, at most he could only verify that he was related to himself. For example, his original black hair was changed to pure natural gold by changing genes. By the way, the problem of hair loss does not exist for Luo Guang. Now Luo Guang, who was running all the way, felt like he was playing the expert realistic mode of Left 4 Dead and speed running alone, but this was not like a game, and the number of special infected people was not limited to a certain number. So when Luo Guang jumped directly from the rooftop to the blood plague wall, the real test had just begun. As soon as he landed, a jockey appeared from the dark alley, making a creepy laugh while running towards Luo Guang's position. That laugh was not just a laugh, but the words of communication between those special infected people, and the person he was communicating with was a hunter who appeared from the balcony of a nearby apartment. It had been hiding in the apartment before, just waiting for the jockey's signal. The jockey was short, which effectively reduced the frontal area hit by bullets, and at the same time, he could hide his figure among the infected. Luo Guang grabbed the left hand of the infected who rushed over, pulled and pushed, and used the other hand to hit another infected who attacked from behind him. He used a lot of force, so the infected who were crowded together fell like dominoes. The jockey jumped up to avoid being knocked down and to grab the delicious food in front of him. Now since Luo Guang pulled out the heat axe from his waist, he used this one-handed axe to disembowel the jockey who jumped high. Sorry, he whispered to the jockey who lost the light in his eyes. Other ordinary infected people may return to society after being injected with the antidote, but special infected people have basically lost this possibility. Their bodies will not return to their original state because the rage virus in their bodies is eliminated. On the contrary, after losing the support of the rage virus, their bodies are likely to collapse. Even if their bodies could withstand the attack and become strange, they, who were once monsters, would not be accepted by the public. So even if these special infected people were not much more dangerous to Luo Guang than ordinary infected people, he still decided to kill them. Maybe some people would say that he was arrogant and had no right to decide his life or death. But Luo Guang didn't care. As long as he could pass this level, others had no right to tell him what to do. The hunter appeared from behind the falling jockey, flew over, stretched out his hands, and was about to pierce the target's chest. Suddenly, a strong force hit the hunter's chin. Luo Guang took advantage of the situation and lifted up the back of the axe, knocking the hunter away. He didn't intend to entangle with the enemy too much. After solving the two special infected people, he was ready to continue to the Mercy Hospital. But the special infected people didn't intend to let him go. More hunters appeared from the balconies of the apartment building, staring at Luo Guang with red eyes. Luo Guang also noticed these sights in the open, and also noticed that many special infected people were hiding in the shadows and blind spots, carefully observing his movements, ready to give him a fatal blow at any time. But he ignored them and continued to run forward. Wua the rammer charged when Luo Guang passed an alley. This was a common sneak attack method used by the rammer. But Luo Guang was very fast. The rammer hit nothing and knocked over the infected person chasing behind him like a bowling ball, then crashed into a street shop and triggered the alarm. Special infected people will not be attracted by the alarm, but ordinary infected people are different. This reduced the number of pursuers behind Luo Guang by half, but also made room for those special infected people. Luo Guang's running speed was getting faster and faster. Those hunters who were good at running and jumping chased him at first, but later they lay down and kept flying, using their strong lower limbs to exert force to barely avoid being left behind by the opponent. However, this was not Luo Guang's full strength. He reserved some strength to deal with various emergencies. For example, the spitter who suddenly appeared in front of him, his mouth was split like the slit-mouthed woman, unable to close again, and green glowing acid dripped from the corner of his mouth. Several spitters spit out phlegm like acid balls, which exploded and spread all over the ground when they hit the ground, trying to stop Luo Guang's progress. There were also spitters behind him, some trying to cut off his retreat, and some attacking him directly. However, Luo Guang had no intention of stopping or retreating, but accelerated and jumped directly over the acid. He did not attack those disgusting spitters when he passed by, and continued to head towards the target. After watching the video sent by the satellite controller, Ronaldo asked the other party to synchronize the satellite monitoring screen to the projection screen of the command post. Although it was not very clear, the general actions of the other party just now could still be seen. This made Ronaldo have many questions in his mind. Who is this person? Why is he so strong? What is his purpose? If the other party's purpose is really the research institute, what should he do next? Commander, Juliet's team has received regular contact and said that they have not broken through the gate yet. The Sine-Alman received another regular contact. Why so long? Ronaldo frowned. Previously, the Juliet team broke into the hospital and successfully reached the secret entrance of the institute, but they immediately reported that the institute had a power outage and needed to force the door open. The institute was very strong, so even after the supplies and door-breaking tools were sent, the Juliet team still made slow progress. Ronaldo only complained because of the unexpected guests. He naturally understood how difficult it was to break through the door of the institute, but it was very easy to open it from the inside. In order to prevent being trapped in the power outage, the designer of the institute hid a mechanical hand crank switch in the control panel on the wall. But the problem was that when the institute had an accident, it could not be contacted, and the last intelligence received was some meaningless letter strings, so Ronaldo could not contact the people in the institute to open the door. Although it was just a complaint, the Sine-Alman still told the captain of the Juliet team about the problem of his superiors. Okay, I know. The Sine-Alman nodded, turned to look at Ronaldo, and said, they said that the power can be turned on and the door can be opened today. After understanding the situation over there, the engineering team in the rear provided a plan for the Juliet team. Drill a hole at the designated location, then change the door that was originally connected to the internal power supply to an external power supply, and then use the computer of the same series in the research institute to open the door. This is the most time-saving and labor-saving method. That's good. After Ronaldo finished speaking, he asked the signalman to tell Juliet's team that an unknown person was heading to the Mercy Hospital, so that the other party could capture the target alive. Luo Guang didn't know that someone was greedy for his body, avoiding the interception and encirclement of those special infected people, and came to the place near the Mercy Hospital. Originally, various special infected people lined up in a long line behind him, vying to chase Luo Guang, but when they were about 50 meters away from the hospital, accompanied by a low roar, those special infected people instantly scattered. It seems that some heavyweight guy has appeared. Feeling the slight vibration of the ground, Luo Guang said to himself. In fact, he didn't need the vibration to remind him. He could understand the other party's meaning from the roar, "Get out of the way, let me do it." Luo Guang mastered the communication methods of the blood plague virus and the Harlan virus, so he easily cracked the communication method between the rage virus infected people. It doesn't matter if the roars of various special infected people are different, because those special infected people use specific sound waves to communicate. After observing along the way, Luo Guang found that those ordinary infected people were fighting with each other. So based on the fact that these people did not die, he thought of a possibility, that is, each infected person still maintained individual differences, so they would attack each other. At the same time, the intelligence of those special infected people was not completely lost, unlike ordinary infected people who completely lost their reason, so they would communicate and cooperate like normal humans. A huge monster crashed through the wall like a tank, and without hesitation, punched away the ordinary infected people in front of him. Luo Guang was prepared. He moved his backpack in front of him, took out a double-barreled shotgun from it, and shot 2 shots at the monster's head. The monster's head did not undergo any changes like the muscles on its body. On the contrary, because the muscles on its body became larger, the head seemed to grow in the middle of the muscles. But the monster's bones were mutated and strengthened, and its skin was hardened and calcified, so the monster did not fall down or slow down its running speed. It endured the damage and roared angrily, speeding up its pace. Luo Guang stuffed the shotgun back into his backpack, took the M1873 Cold Army Cavalry single-action revolver inside, and quickly emptied the bullets in the cylinder. But after the monster was hit by the shotgun, it began to raise one arm to protect its head, so it blocked the bullets from the revolver. However, the monster was top-heavy, and if it only used one hand to run, its body would obviously lean to one side, and its speed would slow down after a round of bursts. Luo Guang threw the gun back into his backpack, and then took out an artillery revolver of the same model but shorter in length. Both of these were products produced before 1900, and they are over 100 years old, but under the careful care of the owner, they are still smooth to use, so as a respect for the original owner, he did not throw them away after use. In addition to these 2 guns, his backpack also has 5 Colt Python revolvers of different appearances, all of which he borrowed from the owner of the convertible when he stayed in the town before. During this period, he did not see the owner of the house infected with the rage virus, so he could not ask for his opinion. After taking out the gun, Luo Guang fired intermittently, gradually leading the enemy into the building next to him. As the saying goes, a big body makes a weak door. Although the monster will not get stuck at the door, it will still be slowed down, and he can also use the indoor environment to hide his position. The monster is still roaring, hammering the wall with his hands, using one small eye to look for the hateful guy who hurt him, and the other small eye was naturally blinded by Luo Guang's previous shotgun pellets, and he can't see anything for the time being. Luo Guang is at the end of the room behind the wall, waiting for the enemy to smash the wall with his arms. At the moment when he is not defending his head, he uses the classic Western cowboy single-action revolver rapid-fire method, which is to hold the trigger and never let go, and then quickly hit the hammer to achieve the effect of rapid shooting. At this time, the revolver in his hand has become a double-action Colt Python revolver, but the gun can still use single-action rapid-fire method. All 6 bullets were sent into the monster's eye sockets without exception, crushing its brain. The monster seemed to be unable to swallow this breath, and took a few steps forward, and finally fell in front of Luo Guang. Luo Guang blew the smoke from the muzzle, turned the gun, and put it into the backpack in one go. Then, while other infected people had not come, he replaced the weapons he had used with new bullets. Then he ran all the way to the direction of the Mercy Hospital. As if sensing that the heavyweight monster was solved by Luo Guang, more special infected people, led by 3 monsters, blocked the door of the Mercy Hospital and attacked Luo Guang as soon as they saw him. Meow, I finished typing with difficulty. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 408. Luo Guang looked at the special infected people rushing towards him, and ran to the nearby building without saying a word. His goal was to disperse the enemy and defeat them one by one. But these special infected people seemed to know how he had dealt with the muscle monster before, and took another approach. Ronaldo saw the situation Luo Guang was facing from the projection screen of the command post, and he couldn't help but sweat for him. Although he didn't know the other party's identity, he couldn't help but admire him when he saw him cleaning up so many special infected people alone. Perhaps it was out of a soldier's respect for the strong that he couldn't help but think of providing artillery support to the other party. Now that those special infected people are concentrated in one place, it is indeed a good time to hit the enemy hard, but he is worried that the unknown person will affect the mission of Juliet's team. What's going on? The Sign Alman was slacking off, looking at the projection screen with a surprised face. I saw that those huge special infected people did not enter the building that Luo Guang ran into, but directly beat the walls and concrete pillars on the first floor outside the building. They want to demolish the building and drive the enemy out. Ronaldo stood up. The enemy's IQ was much higher than he thought. Suddenly, he broke into a cold sweat and thought of a question. Such a smart special infected person stood at the door of the Mercy Hospital to intercept unknown people, so why didn't he attack the Juliet team in the hospital for such a long time? And it was so easy to get the door opening equipment dropped by the air? Ronaldo did not receive the report from the metal team that the meat lichen could detect their actions, and he had not been to the front line in person, so he believed what the Juliet team said before. Now he had to think about whether the situation of the Juliet team was true. Or he was just worrying about nothing and scaring himself, but he still decided to contact the Juliet team. Ronaldo concealed his real purpose of looking for the other party and asked tentatively, "This is the command post. There are many special infected people gathering outside the hospital. Do you need artillery support?" The captain of the Juliet team did not answer immediately, saying, "After I cleaned up the blood and flesh on the ground, confirmed the plan and took the equipment, I used explosives to blow up the door to the underground area. I did not encounter any attacks from special infected people, so I don't need artillery support." Hearing the other party's answer, the commander's face changed a little, and asked, "So lucky? Not even one?" Once doubts arise, it is difficult to eliminate. The collapsed passage should not stop those sturdy guys, but the special infected who can use various strategies did not launch an attack. Besides, the reason why the other party does not need support is that they did not encounter an attack. The Juliet team is now in the underground area of the hospital, in front of the military's secret research institute, and the enemies are gathering outside the hospital. This is obviously the best opportunity for artillery bombing. If the other party is worried about being affected, it is right to refuse support in the name of their own safety. The captain of the Juliet team did not notice that Ronaldo's tone had changed, and said, "Yes, we are really lucky. Maybe there are other emergencies, so those special infected people have no time to pay attention to us." The enemy gathered outside the hospital, and their Juliet team should have the first reaction that the enemy was going to attack them, so they needed artillery or armed helicopter support. But the other party said that the enemy's target was not them, and refused fire support. He did not say that the unknown person had come to the vicinity of the Mercy Hospital, and the captain of the team did not name them. So after a simple test, Ronaldo felt that the possibility of Juliet team having problems was about 30%, which was enough for him to act and prepare for it. Okay, you guys pay attention to safety. With a simple conclusion in mind, Ronaldo took out his mobile phone to contact Commander Doug. He needed to know more about the rage virus, such as whether the special infected people could speak human language. Luo Guang felt the vibration from the soles of his feet, and those special infected people did not come to cause trouble, and he also roughly guessed the enemy's plan. With the help of the system, even if the building shook like an earthquake, he could still run up quickly as if walking on flat ground. The enemies had been waiting on the rooftops of the surrounding buildings for a long time, waiting for Luo Guang to show up. As soon as he appeared, the acid sprayers spit acid directly at the entire rooftop. The hunters ignored the distance between the buildings and pounced almost simultaneously. Luo Guang directly electrified his feet, activated the strengthening skill to stimulate the activity of his body cells, and jumped to the other side of the floor before the enemy's attack arrived. He now roughly understood that the enemy's strategy was to use the net to restrict his actions, and then concentrate on the advantage of numbers to solve himself. However, it is not so easy for the enemy to demolish the building, and this time difference is his chance to counterattack. The muscular special infected person used the same trick again and began to smash the wall and the load-bearing column. Luo Guang appeared from the window of the middle floor, holding a revolver, and launched a counterattack against the acid sprayers. Corrosive acid is troublesome, but the defense of the acid sprayer is very low. The shaking of the floor did not affect his shooting accuracy, and he killed one acid sprayer with one shot. As he expected, the acid sprayers were full of acid in their bodies, and after death they would leave a corrosive liquid on the ground, so when he first encountered this kind of enemy, he did not rashly attack them with a one-handed axe. It's a pity that other special infected are immune to this acid. Perhaps the enemy thinks that the exploder is useless here, so there are no special infected with big bellies like the ones that the Metal Squad has encountered. The smokers appeared and shot out their strong and flexible intestines, targeting the enemies behind the window. Luo Guang dodged while pulling out a one-handed axe and directly cut off the intestines that shot through the glass. While the smokers were hurting and retracting their tongues, he leaned over and used another revolver to kill these smokers who could attack remotely one by one. The green smoke that exploded after the death of the smokers became the delicacy of other special infected. After they took a few puffs, their eyes flashed fiercely and they let out a refreshing roar. The hunter hooked himself on the wall with his claws, and jumped into the window as soon as Luo Guang retracted. But Luo Guang had already planned to change his position. He just finished shooting and broke through the wall from the other side, fell to the street, and then rushed to the Mercy Hospital. As an important public facility, the hospital is more solid and reliable. Moreover, when he came here before, the positions of those special infected people told him that the Mercy Hospital was the place they wanted to protect. So as long as he entered it, the muscle monster would not smash the house anymore, and could only choose to deal with him indoors. Those special infected people obviously did not expect that the enemy would suddenly change their strategy. The fastest hunter could not stop Luo Guang, and the other guys, needless to say, could only watch Luo Guang enter the Mercy Hospital. The thickness of the meat lichen in the hospital was obviously much thicker than outside. His trouser legs had been stained red and stained with a lot of meat scraps, but it did not affect Luo Guang's speed. There had been a fierce battle in the lobby of the hospital. The 5.56 mm bullet shells on the ground told Luo Guang that military personnel had been here, so he directly followed the bullets and the infected people who were shot dead, and followed the traces left by the Juliet team. The hunter took advantage of the closed space, kept jumping back and forth, and caught up with Luo Guang, who stopped the body-strengthening skill. Entering the attack range of the flying pounce, the hunter made a sharp cry and pounced on the prey. Luo Guang turned around, holding the python revolver in his hand at his waist, ready to fire. In less than a second, all 6 bullets were fired, and the hunters who were flying in the air and unable to change direction were headshot again. Soon, he came to the underground area, followed the route of Juliet's team, and found the entrance to the institute. The door of the institute revealed a gap that could be passed by one person. In this room, the traces of bullets and other things disappeared, and there were no bodies of infected people or military personnel left. And he also smelled a strong blood plague pheromone. The footsteps of the special infected came into Luo Guang's ears, but he was alone against thousands of people. He stood at the bottom of the stairs and swung his axe to kill the hunters who were chasing him. An acid sprayer was grabbed by the foot by the muscle monster and thrown down the stairs. Luo Guang knew that the other party was going to carry out a suicide attack, and he didn't want to get stained, so he avoided it directly. The Crasher took this opportunity to rush down first, but was kicked to death by Luo Guang, flew to the wall of the room, and was quickly sucked into it by the wall of flesh and blood. Luo Guang observed this situation and realized that these flesh and blood things around were more like the blood plague wall of the blood plague virus than the flesh lichen of the Harlan virus. He gave way to the stairs because of the acid sprayer, so more special infected people poured in. But those special infected people seemed to have stepped into a quagmire. The hunter could not jump up, and the impactor fell directly to the ground. Not on the ground, but the flesh and blood of the entire space began to expand, quickly blocking the gap exposed by the door of the institute. Those trapped special infected people were wrapped in the squirming flesh and blood, and then melted by the mucus that seeped out and absorbed into the blood plague wall. Perhaps the military personnel before were also solved by this blood plague wall. Too disgusting. Luo Guang commented, and the flesh and blood at his feet had turned into charcoal at some point. The controller behind the wall of flesh and blood clearly noticed some changes around Luo Guang, but it had used the blood plague wall to defeat enemies before, so it did not change its mind. It controlled the flesh and blood to absorb enough energy and expand rapidly, squeezing towards Luo Guang from all directions. In a flash, lightning appeared in this space, and then kept flashing and circling. The high-voltage electricity penetrated the air, and the blood evaporated and carbonized the flesh through the thermal effect of the current. The powerful electricity made the self-repair ability of the blood plague wall useless, and the blood plague wall in the room was directly cleared by him. Luo Guang took back the Faraday cage made of hardened armor. He just used this thing to protect the electronic equipment on his body. As for himself, it can be said that he is basically immune to lightning attacks. After entering the research institute, those special infected people did not chase him again. But the surroundings are still full of dense blood plague walls, but any attack launched against Luo Guang will be strangled by the thunderous counterattack. And it seems that without those special infected people as nutrients, the number of counterattacks is not many. Luo Guang did not stroll around, but took advantage of the fact that there were no special infected people here, and he ate high-energy food with high carbohydrates and low fiber. This is a kind of energy food he invested in researching, and he promoted it in the name of sports medicine, and received orders from the sports industry, successfully recovering his investment money. The company is now preparing to improve this food to make it more palatable, and then promote it to civilian industries such as camping, wilderness survival, and exploration. Of course, Luo Guang's original intention was just to provide a quick way to replenish his energy, so as long as the volume remains unchanged, he can get as much energy as he wants, and he doesn't care much about the taste. By the way, using electricity to deal with the enemy just now did not consume all the energy in his body, and replenishing energy now is just a precaution. The blood plague wall blocked the wall lights or maps, so Luo Guang didn't know whether the institute had a power outage, and it was difficult to accurately find places such as the virus storage room and the director's office. But the security room is still easier to find, usually near the gate. The reason why the target is set on the security room first is that it is easiest to find the map of the institute there. Without the paper version, he can also be a mobile power supply, but this depends on the situation of the computer in the security room. If it really doesn't work, then he can only use the stupid method, sweep the blood plague wall at every fork in the road, and check the covered signs. At the blockade of Savannah City, in the Lighthouse Country Military Command Post, Ronaldo did not get any useful information from the military researcher given by Commander Doug. According to the intelligence uploaded by the Rage Virus Research Institute, all Rage virus testers will lose the ability to speak human language without exception as long as the FA mutation occurs. After hearing Ronaldo's question, the researcher gave him a possibility, that is, asymptomatic infection or immunity, but this could not answer his current question. Yes, even after getting a reply from another institute, his doubts did not diminish. Is there no contact from the Juliet team? Seeing the unknown person entering the hospital, Ronaldo timed it and asked the Sine Alman. The Sine Alman seemed to be very concerned about the guy who was very good at fighting, so he immediately thought of the reason why his superior asked this question. He controlled the communication equipment, but the other party did not answer. No contact was answered. The Sine Alman tried to call the contact many times but did not get a response. Damn it, Ronaldo cursed angrily. The only thing that could be explained was that there was a problem with the Juliet team, and it did not mean that the infection of the team was under control. Now he had no idea what happened on the front line. Without intelligence support, he didn't know what to do next. The Juliet unit was a special unit assigned to him by Commander Doug. Although he didn't know what was special about it, it was already the strongest infantry squad under his command in terms of combat effectiveness. And now that they had lost contact, he couldn't explain it. The Sine Alman looked at Ronaldo, who was thinking with his head down, pretended to adjust the communication, and sent out a piece of intelligence. The person who received the signalman's intelligence was named Emma Greenwell. Thanks for the reward, subscription, and votes. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 409. Chapter 409. Sorry, I have been suffering from insomnia for the past few nights. I feel groggy and can't write. I will take a day off. Sorry, meow.